I was watching Fox News as I worked out this morning.
Alrighty, folks, welcome on into the Central Committee stream with your host Mike from PA. We are live once again. How is everybody doing today? It is January 26th, 2026, and we are beginning to win. We are beginning to win even harder. This is the home of the prescient, where good political analysis that's actually based on knowledge exists. You want to watch politics by somebody who knows what they're talking about? Well, welcome to the Central Committee stream. Good morning. I showed my boyfriend your kill line vid and he loved it. See, that's what we call first time chats, folks. Hey, Mike, sent you a DM in Discord regarding the Vote Socialist comms controller linking up with you. They won on the stream. Okay. Good morning, Mike. You almost made me lose my watch streak with your Sunday stream, but I made it. Yeah. Oh, yeah. I did a bonus stream yesterday, chat. And if you wanted to watch it and you missed it, do you have alerts turned on? Go check and make sure you have alerts turned on. Make sure you join the Discord. Good morning, King Daddy D-Mac. What's up, man? General strike on Friday. Betting on ICE popularity. Folks, one of the things I want to say, can I say this before we continue? That I am just so proud of this community. You know I'm making fun of you guys for those of you who missed the Sunday stream. But the fact that I could just press go live with no warning and 5K of you show up is fucking crazy to me. On a day outside my normal streaming day, like, it is so gratifying to see that a principled leftist, like, for example, me, what sets me apart is that I never had a period of time when I was a streamer where I was an asshole. I've always been a good person the entire time. I hated Destiny since the beginning. I never spent any time liking that motherfucking rat. I was locked the fuck in. I forced my dad to watch the Central Committee stream yesterday because I had to drive around and I put him on my sound system. He liked it. Yeah, I mean, well, I like that. That's good. I think people are getting my energy. I think the thing that's happening is it's not that I've changed. It's that you guys have changed. You guys are as angry as I am. You're catching up. And I don't mean that to be arrogant and say that I'm smarter than you. I just had life experiences in a certain sequence that broke my trust with the Democratic Party very early. Later, I'm going to talk about some deep Mike from PA lore later. And, oh my God, it looks like ICE has hurt some other woman. This is not good. Oh, this FD signifier clip. I might have to watch this. This looks pretty good. They hurt a woman in the hand with less lethal ammunition. Is that right? It looks like they are injured. I mean, this is like pretty standard for anti-riot events. Oh, okay, good. The thing about, can I just say something about this ICE stuff is I get very concerned about sensationalizing and clickbaiting around the ICE stuff because this is not a joke. This is like really people's lives. It's very serious. I'm personally getting involved in activism. Like, this is another thing, chat. I am not just going to make money off this movement. I'm going to actually show up and do shit. And I am slowly but surely starting to make sure that we're part of something instead of just sitting back as observers or media, but that we actually get ourselves involved. And one of the things that I want you guys to do, if you're in Southern California with me, I want you to show up with me. Let's see. Right. Oh, by the way, tonight at 7 p.m. there is going to be, I'm going to go to this. Oh, fuck. What the fuck? Son of a bitch. Okay. The Ice Watch Community Patrols training. It looks like they broke the attendance limit. Okay. There's a lot of good events happening at DSA in Southern California. This Saturday is the 31st. And it is the general chapter meeting for DSA LA. Gold is over 5,000? I didn't look for like a day. So I want all of you to show up to the general chapter meeting. I'm going to go. Silver is 110? What? Oh my God. That's fucking crazy. The bubble is fucking insane. What the fuck? I might have to start prospecting silver, chat. So anyway, make sure you guys show up. If you're in Southern California, I'm going to be recommending this all week. Sign up. We are going to get involved. It's going to be on Saturday the 31st, 2 to 5 p.m. So if you're in Southern California, the LA area, you're going to show up to this chapter meeting with me. I bought 200 ounces of silver at around $22. Should I sell now? Okay, well, let's do the let's do a calculate. First of all, good choice. Here's what I would tell you. I am not your financial advisor. But what I will say is that it depends upon the rest of your portfolio. If you want to know how the standard rich people shit, they tend to have a diversified portfolio. So you want to make sure that precious metals do not represent too large of a share of your portfolio, right? So I would definitely take a little bit off the table as long as you have a long-term capital gain and it's a larger share of your portfolio. But if it's still, I don't remember what people recommend as far as that. Like, you know, I mean, they're doing better than the stock market. So I don't know how I can say, you know, to do anything. Keep holding till you need it. IMO, this shit got more room to rise. Here's my general take on those kind of takes. You should rebalance your portfolio to ensure that you don't get wiped out by a bubble, right? All precious metals are booming. That is a fucking insane bubble. What the fuck? You know what's happening, chat? Is the dollar is actually being fundamentally undermined in a real way. That's really what's happening. I cannot, this is crazy. I mentioned silver on my stream and it goes vertical. What the fuck? Does anyone have the original clip of me talking about silver in November? Somebody get that clip. Can someone find the stream where I talked about silver in November? And I said when I talked about how it was like $50 an ounce. Was it Giannis about the devaluation of the dollar being purposeful? Yes, of course. I need to get out of fucking dollars, man. Jesus Christ. Trump has showed data that links to tariffs. Export has been booming, but they didn't say most of the exports are precious metal, i.e. gold and silver. Actually, America has been scrapping itself for a while now. This is something that's really an interesting fact. But one of America's top exports is scrap metal, which, if you don't know, what that really means is products that we used to make in America that were high quality being reduced to scrap and exported. So we're literally being mined of all the quality products. They're being replaced by crap. It's actually fucking gross. Gold. Okay, this thing sucks. It's too small. I want the actual big like, this is so fucking useless. It doesn't even tell you what it is. What the fuck? This chart sucks. Wow, look at all the pink squares. This is dog shit. Literally nothing, no text. What the fuck is this shit? How has America's exports changed? Notice how we're not making shit as much and now we're just selling oil. So all the like manufacturing stuff, like half of that is gone. The deindustrialization of America is fucking insane. I'm going to invest in growable food for my area because my money devalue. Would the cost of everything else go out of control? Yes, indeed it would. Hypothetically, if America entered hyperinflation, any good or commodity would become much more valuable very quickly. How money works did a video on why the economy hasn't collapsed yet. The TLDR is they are pulling the copper out of the walls to sell. I honestly think that's true, and I'm kind of concerned because I'm like, what do you even say? What do you even say? Traditionally, the answer was to just buy, you know, diversified index funds, maybe a little bit of gold. You know, maybe, but it's all just so much of a bubble. And if you're wondering why people say it's a bubble, market cap to GDP ratio. This is called the Buffett indicator, the market cap to GDP ratio. So basically what this means is the total value for all publicly traded stocks in a country versus the GDP. And what you can see right now is that the stock market value is larger in relation to the actual value of our economy than history. This is the largest bubble of all time in stock market valuation in the United States. Like what the actual GDP of the country is versus the value of the stock. The Buffett indicator, also known as the market cap to GDP, has gained prominence as a long-term valuation indicator for stocks, largely due to Warren Buffett's endorsement. In a Fortune magazine interview back in 2001, Buffett referred to it as probably the best single measure of where valuations stand at any given moment. This statement has drawn attention to the indicator's potential significance in assessing market conditions. The calculation of the Buffett indicator involves dividing the total market value of all publicly traded stocks within a country by the country's gross domestic product. By comparing the stock market size to the overall economic output, this ratio provides insights into the relative valuation of the market. To illustrate the concept, one common approach is to examine the ratio between the Wilshire 5000 and the GDP of the United States. The Wilshire 5000 is widely recognized as the definitive benchmark for the U.S. equity market, aiming to measure the total market capitalization of all U.S. equity securities with a readily available price data. By dividing the market index by the GDP, we can obtain a snapshot of the market's valuation in relation to the country's economic performance. So right now, the total annualized GDP of the United States is 31 trillion. The stock market value is 69 trillion. We've never had a ratio like this. Now, so this is to say, old conventional wisdom is no longer applies. And I don't know what to say. You're giving me a clip of what I just said? Thank you. Thank you, brother. Also, China Glaze Nexus made a video about how China is rising super fast in silicon and memory controller consumer markets. Oh yeah, and don't worry, they'll tariff this shit. They're not gonna let you buy high quality cheap RAM. Okay, like don't worry, they're gonna tariff the fuck out of this shit. They're not gonna let you like purchase shit for cheap. Mike, have you talked about TikTok yet?
Ellison is bad. ICE is bad. Trump is bad. Larry Israel is bad. Larry Ellison is bad. ICE is bad. Trump, bad. Israel.
This video is under review and can't be shared right now. What? You can't even say Israel is bad on TikTok anymore? Oh my lord. I guess we'll have to find out more. 0 views on political videos. I'm not allowed to be a TikToker anymore, I guess, without explanation. My videos are shown to 0 people now. That's what I was worried about. That's why I was very concerned about the TikTok thing. And people were like, no, it's not gonna happen. And I was like, yes, it is. Yes, it fucking is. Good chance it's a data center down due to a winter storm. Okay, whatever. I'm gonna wait until I don't want to overreact. TikTok's new CEO.
Designate the use of the term Zionist as a proxy for a protected attribute as hate speech. So if somebody were to use Zionist, of course you can use it in the sense of you're a proud Zionist, but if you're using it in the context of degrading somebody, calling somebody a Zionist as a dirty name, then that gets designated as hate speech to be moderated against. Over the course of 2024, we tripled the amount of accounts that we were banning for hateful activity. We also have, I think, over 24 Jewish organizations that are constantly feeding us intelligence and information when they spot violative trends. There is no finish line. There's no finish line to moderating hate speech, identifying hateful trends, trying to keep the platform safe. There's no such thing as an end game. We made a change to designate the use of the term Zionist as a proxy for a protected attribute as.
When I told you that they were freaking out over you criticizing Israel and that they were going to censor the platform, that's absolutely batshit crazy. I can't really say what I'm thinking. I gotta be honest with you, chat. How do I put this? I'm gonna get permit, man. I can't say what I can't say it. It has to be a system outage. Yeah, that's probably true. Okay, don't link me in gaming content right now. Just say what's in your mind. I'm following the rules of Twitter and Twitch. I think what I would say is, in generations gone by, when they were told you can't criticize the king, they went and they shot British redcoats that represented that impingement on their First Amendment rights. Like Americans, John Brown, he went to Kansas and he shot slavers dead. Those are historical events in the American tradition. My fellow celebrity is going to speak up, or a real American hero, Alex Jeffrey Peretti. I mean, he is an American hero. Federal immigration agents are now responsible for 67% of the homicides in Minneapolis so far this year. I don't do politics. Okay, well, you're a fully grown adult, so maybe it's time to start. I mean, that's what I think. I got to be honest with you. I think that if you're an adult and you don't do politics, that's fucking cringe. You're a fucking cringe lord. All right, let's get into the coverage, guys, gals.
Everything I'm saying is very reactive right now. I have not sat with these thoughts, so please, be patient with me. Figured I'd jump on real quick. The death cult strikes again. ICE killed another person today. A couple things are pretty clear. It's interesting to see what Twitter wants to show me. when I searched. Did I search ice shooting? Yeah, I searched ice shooting.
Slow down the footage of the ice shooting that just took place in Minneapolis, Minnesota. You can see that the ICE agents very intentionally remove the man's weapon from his waistband and toss it off to the side. If I pause it right here, you can see that the ICE agent took the man's weapon and is throwing it to the side. After they shoot this unarmed man and he's lying there on the ground motionless. Look, you can see his feet on the ground right there. They continue to dump bullets into.
But yeah, this was ugly. Specifically here though, I just saw, so people are talking about this woman's camera angle. Let me settle everything because I'm all over the place right now. So there's a massive protest happening in Minneapolis, which is really dope actually. And we'll come back to that because that's what I think is the most important thing to focus on is like the resistance to all of this and like how it can be really valuable going forward to actually address what's going on. I saw this woman's video already and you can kind of see what happens. There's just, again, people, regular white people, it seems, because this is Minneapolis. This is not Atlanta. This is not DC, Chicago, Houston, who are just kind of out there agitating against ICE, which I think is the correct thing to be doing. An ICE agent comes over and pushes over a woman. There's a guy, the guy that's now dead and on the ground, tries to pick the woman up, is trying to defend the woman. And then the ICE agents come to try to subdue him. And it's like 5 dudes and they're wrestling him to the ground. And in the middle of wrestling him to the ground, one of them shoots him in the face. He's clearly not posing a real threat. Doesn't seem to be armed. They say he had a gun on him. But as you saw from that video, there's angles that seem to indicate that the gun was taken from him. And it just looks wild. It's wild. When you see the angle from her, it's even more damning. Like this was just a mugging and a bunch of untrained guerrillas, one of which fired his weapon. And then they shot him like 4 or 5 times while he was on the ground. And they shot him like 4 or 5 times when he was on the ground. There we go. So you see.
So they shove a woman for no fucking reason. She wasn't doing anything. They assault a woman. That's a crime.
So you see, they push what looks like a woman here, right? ICE agent comes, pushes her over, and the guy isn't doing anything. He's just trying to help his friend. They pepper spray him. And there you go. Yeah, I'll leave it there because I don't know the rules. I don't know the rules for Twitch. I don't want to, get clapped. Psycho Sturgeon.
He was telling them, don't touch her, and asking the woman, are you okay? And those were his last words. If you're not angry about this, are you even human? Here's kind of what I would say. The answer is fascists are not human beings, okay? I understand that this is uncomfortable for a lot of people because you don't know your history. That's really it. Or you're stupid. And it's okay to not know shit, but I want you to understand that there is no bottom with fascists. Okay, once a person starts violating people's rights and murdering them because of who they are, because of their empathy, there is no bottom. They're not going to stop. Okay, they're just going to keep escalating and doing more and more and more and more and more shit. This is what you need to understand. That is the course of history. When the Nazis took over Germany, they kept failing, and as they failed, they needed more and more scapegoats. And the elite fascists started to steal more and more money from the victims. And so they started to target people because they had stuff to steal. And because the resistance is what they took out first, they went after the communists. They went after the socialists. They went after the trade unionists. The only people that could actually fight back were targeted first. That's what always happens. So you need to get ahead of the fucking curve. And when somebody declares themselves in support of this, they are no longer human. A Chinese professor has a good explainer on this. ICE agents are just like a bunch of newborn wolves. Once they taste blood, the hunting would only get more frequent. Of course.
It says things are starting to feel very helpless here in Minnesota. I just listened to the government.
Scientists say first they went for the Jews. No, they didn't. First they went for the communists because the communists are the resistors. First they went for next they went for the socialists and the trade unionists, because those are the people that have the means and the knowledge to fight back. And the only alternative method that has the strength to defeat fascism is on the left.
It's the same, stay civil, but as we're being killed. try to get from yesterday to the back of my head through all of this. So I would say the strike from yesterday is still the big story. Look at this. That's the story right there. Like, not to take anything away from Alex Preddy, but I'm getting genuine chills looking at this. This is what needs to happen. Because this isn't a protest. This is a strike. This is a general strike, and from my understanding, the largest American general strike in like a generation, essentially, in 10 below degrees. Now, in a perfect world, because I know we're talking about Walls and whoever else, in a perfect world, you would have Democrats or anyone but Democrats, right, in office calling for a general strike, calling for mass public demonstrations, not just go out and protest one day. Nobody goes to work for the next, we'll start with 48 hours. You get the mayors of all of these blue cities. Like if you could get, like if Zoran Mamdani wants to win me over forever, and I will glaze that man to the end of the earth, to the end times. If he gets all these blue mayors together, he goes to get Brandon Johnson, whoever's in LA, whoever's in Minneapolis, whoever's in all these states, Chicago, I already said Chicago, Seattle. And he says, look, in unison, we running the risk, but he say, look, we strike. You shut down all these blue enclaves, these blue major cities. You shut down their financial districts. You shut down their...
Are Dems scared of being persecuted themselves, or are they collaborators? The first thing is Democrats are part of the corporate government fusion that is a necessary prerequisite for fascist violence. Like that's the necessary prerequisite, right? They are part of the elite, and they get paid to serve the elite's interests. But fascism rises when elite interests are threatened. So Democrats are now facing this contradiction, which is their base, their voters, the grassroots, the supposed voters they represent, are completely opposed to what the elites are doing. But the Democrats only get signals from the elites. The only time they ever get a signal from the public is during a primary election. And it's very difficult for voters to understand who the corporate Democrats actually are. It's very hard to discern that. Not for anybody who knows what they're doing, but for the population as a whole. And generally, people identify as a Democrat. And that is the reality. Sorry about that, Chad. I was just fixing something. I'm a steward for my union, SC 721. I don't want to say how much, but we had an emergency meeting over the weekend, but there are talks happening. Other union presidents are talking to each other right now. Yes, we need to get, everything needs to start lining up. We need to start fighting back. And I honestly feel like I'm behind the curve. I've seen this coming for a long time, and I should have been more involved. And I'm trying to get more involved. I'm trying to rush back and, take positions of leadership.
Infrastructure for 48 hours to start, you know what I mean? Tablecloth says we're going to see Mamdani shaking hands with the director of ICE for the end of the year. I guarantee it. Aside from whether or not he's that bad, I don't think he's that bad of a politician. That would just be bad politics on his end. But like there needs to be mass public demonstrations. Mass public divestment, I really should say. Yeah, it would do something because like they care about money. They care about money, and they care about, like, chaos is the worst thing. You can't, somebody said supply. You can't get logistics. You can't get resources and materials from A to B. You look at what France does every 18 months. The French are in the streets every 18 months. And every time they do it, they get something out of it. I don't know what they're getting. I don't know if it's the greatest thing ever. I don't know enough.
Listen, I love the French, but they've been bridled as well. Because the reality is, 100 years ago, rebellion was in the cards. Like, if strikes and protests didn't work, they'd start grabbing fucking people. They'd start arming up. They'd start fighting back. We don't know how to do that anymore. DSA is just a more progressive wing of the Democratic Party. The best way to understand DSA is exactly what you want it to be, in the sense that there is activity that's being done. It's a full spectrum organization. If you want to be doing only electoral politics in Democratic primaries, there is a space at DSA for you to do that. If you want to do nothing but direct action and supervising ICE and doing ICE protection patrols, if you want to be going door to door and training your community how to resist ICE, if you want to be supporting strike operations and doing solidarity actions for trade unions, you could do that. It's literally a blanket organization that does everything. That's why I recommend it, because the more involved you want to be, and in the area that is in your interest or where you feel the most motivation, you will find someone. Now, there are elements of the DSA that are to my right. There's no two bones about it. There are people who say, if only we voted for Kamala, we wouldn't be in this mess. That are in a DSA. That does exist. I'm not gonna lie. There are people to my right in DSA. I am not, shy about saying that. Okay, like I am. And there are people to my left at DSA, if you want to say the left or anarchist and Maoism. Like if you want to call that to my left, that's to my left, I guess. And there are even trots. Although I think DSA makes trots a lot better. When trots are in their own organization, they are honestly useless. On my way to an ICE watch right now. Exactly. Is there a current BDS list of US corps that support what Trump is doing? Here's what I would tell you. The answer to that is everyone. She's right back to defending Obama deportations. Here's kind of my general feeling about talking about Obama and other people. This is where I'm the least authentic when I'm talking to regular people. I'm just going to confess this. I despise Hillary Clinton, Barack Obama, and Kamala Harris for the centrist neoliberal scum and collaborators with the fascists that they are. All right. But I also understand that for the average Democrat, that is an alienating opinion because they want to believe those are nice people, because they think they're nice people because they felt a certain type of way watching them. That's just the way it goes. People don't remember what you did. They remember how you made them feel. So here's what I'll say about Obama. I'll say this is the strategy that I would recommend pursuing. Why are you talking about Obama anyway? He's irrelevant. He may become relevant later, but I'll give you a strategy to how to counter Obama's relevance. The reality is to say, well, in 2008, I had a lot of hope with Obama. Didn't that feel great? Didn't that feel great when we all believed in hope and we looked for the best in the Republican Party? And that's the thing about Obama. I had a lot of hope, but he turned out to be naive. He spent the entire first 2 years of his presidency trying to work across the aisle with Republicans, and it was a total failure. Then when he ran for re-election in 2012, he said the fever was going to break. And when he wasn't running for re-election, Republicans would become normal again. He was wrong about that. So while I like the guy personally and I appreciate how he gave us hope, his strategy of being nice to the Republicans has failed. And I think we need a new strategy. Don't you agree? Don't you agree that ultimately his strategy didn't work and left us with Trump? I wish him the best. I hope he enjoys his retirement. But we need a new strategy. That's why I like people like AOC. That's why I like people like Zohran Mamdani. They're not afraid to fight back against the Republicans. And that's what we need now more than ever. We tried being nice. Hillary Clinton, Kamala Harris, Barack Obama, we tried being nice. We tried kissing the Republicans' ass. We tried to make it as easy as possible for them to change to our side. And what they've shown me is the only thing they respect is fight back. So I'm going to vote for the people that are fighting back the hardest. That's my strategy for normie Dems, which is when you go after somebody like Obama, when you go after somebody like Kamala Harris, I don't know if you noticed, chat, but I try not to post anti-Kamala Harris videos on my TikTok or my YouTube because it's fucking pointless. It does nothing. It is a relevant discussion. What is my thoughts on Working Families Party? I want to answer your question, but I don't want to do it right now. It's what I would consider to be a very advanced discussion, and 95% of the audience is just going to be completely lost. They probably don't even know what Working Families Party is. So if you want to have a super advanced discussion, basically, here's how I feel about progressives. They are a dangerous faction that we need to use, but not trust. And I have a very Machiavellian approach toward organizations like that, where basically they will jump on the bandwagon after we win, but they are one of the main fonts of resistance on our way to winning. So it's a very annoying organization. So I do recommend that socialists join it and participate in it and try to gain leadership in it. It's the way I feel about unions as well, is that we've had we've had 50 years of neoliberalism. All the organizations of the left have been corrupted. You can't count on them because they're corrupted. They did an anti-leftist purge following FDR's death. So a lot of the biggest victories of the left happened while FDR was alive. After FDR was dead, there's been a nonstop Red Scare purge that has been legally mandated, endorsing entryism in the WFP. I mean, it's, again, this is like one of those discussions where people say words and they don't understand what they mean, and it's embarrassing to everybody involved. It's sad when a federal agent has to ask in front of a destroyed hotel entrance, where is the local PD?
Is everyone press? We're over 90. We're all members of the press. We're all press here. Okay.
The guy's out of breath because he gassed himself.
This officer appears to be bleeding from the mouth. Oh my God. Are you okay? I'm fine. Are you okay? I'm fine. Says he's all right. He's all right. Where's the local PD? That's my question for the press. Okay, where is the local PD? What's your message to the local PD, sir? No. Okay. Well, the mayor. Very chaotic.
Sir, while you're giving messages, what would your message to the protesters that want you out be?
An impromptu press conference with them.
As long as you're getting comments, if you have any comments,
please get back up. Back up. Please give me some room.
Here's what I would ultimately say. Vietnamese born American patriot. Hold that L. Catholic. Mentally colonized. Mentally colonized.
About France, but if you're paying attention, they get something out of it every time, and they don't want us to get into the.
Can you imagine being a like right-wing diasporoid of Vietnam? Because like the Vietnamese people have one of the most epic victories against imperialism. I think Vietnamese people may be the proudest resistors against imperialism in human history. They just have W after W after W. And the communists did that. The communist Vietnamese are the toughest fighters in human history. They just keep winning. And to leave Vietnam and then run to the bosom of one of the parties that got their ass whooped and project hatred back on your own noble people is fucking crazy. The dignity, the strength of Vietnam is unmatched.
Into the habit of that here. Lausanne Boy says the people in charge can't afford to lose money for a second. They're over leveraged as it is. I don't know the numbers, but you don't need you don't need an overwhelming majority of people for a general strike to be significant. Hellbell says white fit sitters are going to radicalize too because they feel threatened and targeted by the boot. So, yeah, actually, no, I agree with you. So, I talk about the death cult, right? I had the whole death cult video. But the thing I pointed out in the end is that this is happening because while it doesn't feel or look like it, we are gaining momentum. We are in a more powerful position than we've been in. And so when you see mass demonstrations like this, the response is probably going to be like whenever Trump addresses this, if he's still alive. Are we close to a revolution? I don't think so. Not probably the one you're imagining. We're not close to a massive uprising of armed people. No. Are we close to mass demonstrations? Yeah, I think so. And I don't mean like Black Lives Matter summer 2020. I think like organized mass civil disobedience, general strike type shit is quite possibly on the horizon. That's one of the reasons why I went live, because I wanted to make sure that was driven forward. I don't know how that looks. I don't know who has that information, who knows how that works. What's happening in Minnesota? Minnesota, these are a bunch of white Midwesterners. This isn't California. This isn't, like I said, Atlanta. This isn't DC. This isn't Detroit. The fact that they're doing this here and like literally two of the three people killed by ICE in Minnesota in this month have been just regular white people, white Midwesterners. One was, I believe, a black man that was killed off duty by off-duty guy behind the scenes. I don't know the full details on that. But the two people we have like video of dying, getting shot by ICE agents are just white people, cis white people. So why is he putting pressure on Minnesota specifically? I'm not quite sure.
Here's what you need to, I need to say something. And liberals and rad libs, prepare to be triggered. When you are a socialist, when you are a communist, and you are directly resisting the state in favor of marginalized communities, whiteness does not matter. In fact, the right wing considers leftists of all races to be the most virulent and dangerous threat, because leftists are the only organization and group that has successfully overthrown capitalism. All right, they know, and that's why. Okay, so I know there is without a doubt white privilege, and being a white leftist, I still have white privilege, because when I walk around, people don't look at me and go white leftist, right? I'm still just seen as a white guy walking around. But when you are doing actual left-wing activism against the state, they don't go, that's a white person, better not brutalize them. They go, that's a commie traitor, need to kill them. And there's nothing more annoying to me than when somebody is martyred, people using that as an opportunity to go, see, you only care because a white person got killed. That is not true. And to say it about Minnesota is even more insulting, because this is the city that went to war for George Floyd. This is a city that has earned its bona fides as a font of resistance against white supremacy. So can you please stop with that? That's like honest to God wrecker shit. And it's embarrassing for everyone. I think that brave martyrs should be lauded.
Sure. I know part of it is just the truth social of it all, the scary Somalian pirates in Minnesota. Minnesota's also like a deeply blue state. Yeah, white people getting shot in the street is crazy. Whoever this doesn't mobilize wasn't going to do anything to begin with. I mean, yes and no, but it is something for us to be paying attention to white people as victims of state violence right now. I can't think of, chat, when has this happened recent in my lifetime, in the last 40 years? I wouldn't call Charlottesville state violence. Ashley Babbitt, wasn't that the January 6th girl that got killed? Yeah, we're talking about state violence. We're not talking about like white terrorist violence. We're not talking about cult stuff, because that's what makes it. See, you peep what I'm doing here. Going back to my video, when it's cult stuff and spree shooters and white supremacists, I think regular white folks can dissociate. They disassociate when it's a cult. But when it's state violence, when the police, because everybody knows the police kill plenty of white people unarmed, but it doesn't get.
Actually, the reality is that the police in America kill everyone. If you stripped away every minority death from American police, they'd still be hyper violent compared to other European police, to other developed countries. Like, this is a reality. Like, we have a fascist government that kills white people all the time, but it's the racial bribe that covers it up. The fact that the police market themselves as targeting black men is what they use to justify all the killing they do of white people, which is fucking insane as well. Now, they disproportionately target black people. Black people are disproportionately the victims of our oppression. Black people are used to justify oppression that hits white people too. White people in America are oppressed too by our disgusting government, but black people get it much worse. That's the essence of what white supremacy is for. White supremacy, the racial bribe, is a psychological salve that you give the white working class to justify their own oppression. White supremacy splashes back on us too. Even, you know what I mean? Like, that's the essence of the liberation. The essence of liberation is, as a white man, as a straight white man, I still want anti-racism to win. I still want capitalism to be overturned, because I would gain. It's not even altruistic of me. I would live a better life too if more people were liberated, if more people were educated, if more people were able to maximize their potentialities. That is the reality. It's selfish of me to want you to live a good life.
A lot of attention, and it doesn't feel like state violence, but the rest of this stuff is state violence. Like what we just saw, the man that just got murdered in Renee Good, that is state violence, and that's different. Something in me, maybe something foolish, feels like that's new enough to do something. Nerd That Was Promised says, also, ICE being seen as outsiders is a big factor. Even white people don't see ICE as their local neighborhood cops. They see ICE as an invading army. The moment they started killing their neighbors, it's instinctual. How do you counteract state violence at this scale? Right here. So specifically, specifically to get the ICE shit to calm down, is this, right? Here's my galaxy brain theory. This might be enough to get them to chill out with ICE. Right now, all these people will go home if ICE goes away. Not all of them, but a lot of them. The damage is done in terms of like, there's some that will be forever radicalized. There's some that will have that are going to get their eyes opened by this. There are some people that will forever be, what do we call it? I want to call it red pilled on the left because red, but I don't want to use blue pilled either because I don't want to rose pilled. Sure. I like that. Rose pilled or bread pilled. There's some that will be rose pilled or bread pilled from this experience for the rest of their lives. There's a few will be left pilled.
Okay. I want to say something and it's going to be controversial. Stop talking like we've already lost. Stop talking like we've already lost. Stop talking about how like we're going to return to being lifestyleists. The masses are changing their mind in fundamental ways right now. And one of the things that worries me is that old socialists who are used to no progress being made are keeping their ambitions small. We need to aim for the fucking stars right now. Stop being small beans. Now is the time. Now is the time to ask for it all, to take it all, to fight for it all. Swing for the fences. And this is one of the things that makes me feel like I need to get more involved with trying to put my hat in the ring for leadership is I feel like a lot of people aren't able to see the opportunity. They are like, well, we'll be able to have double the people at our monthly meeting or whatever the fuck. It's like they have those kind of small ambitions. Bureaucratic ambitions is what I would call them instead of revolutionary ambition. And if you want to be ahead of this movement, we need to start claiming leadership of the movement. And the reality, and if you're old and tired and your heart is hurt and you've been burned before, shut the fuck up. I don't care. What I want you to understand is we're all going to die one day. We're all going to die one day. And 30, 40 years from now, do you want to look back at this moment and said, we should have gone for more. This was such a gold opportunity. We should have pushed for more. Or do you want to look back on this and go, well, we tried, but we failed. I'm so glad that we did. I'm so mad we tried. I wish we hadn't tried. You think that's what you're going to say?
The vast majority of regular folks, they just want stability here in the States. They just want America to feel normal. Even though normal has never been normal for most Americans, but they want that. Let's say it's 75%, let's say it's 70%, and this has given us an extra 5% to work with for the foreseeable future. But that other 65%, if Trump chills with the ICE stuff, they'll go back home. People that they're not watching me and they're not watching Tim Pool. These are people watching, what is it? Is it God Save the Pod? What's the new biggest podcast? Pod Save America. Yeah. So everybody watching, 85% of Pod Save America's audience and Joe Rogan's audience makes up the majority of Americans. And those people, if ICE leaves Minneapolis, will go home because they want the status quo. But if this keeps escalating, if Trump and the MAGA whoever keeps doubling down, Pod Sabian's talking about general strike. Look at me being proven. What? Hey, we on to something then. And
see what I mean? Like I think everybody needs to understand. Like this is where old heads are a problem because when you're used to bunker mentality, when you're used to being in the defensive, and then all of a sudden allies join the field and you have the advantage. If you're an old head, if you're a defensive minded person, you're not seeing the opportunity. You're just relieved of pressure. Now is the time to lean forward and push for more.
Oh, I think they will? Yeah. I think they will calm down because the contradictions got to keep heightening and they need to lower the contradictions. But yeah, what's happening right now from my perspective, my moderately informed perspective, is more dangerous in the long term and on a grand scale for them than us.
This is what you always talk about. We do not know what is politically plausible. Exactly. I mean, obviously we have to make certain judgments, right? Obviously we have to deploy resources in a certain way, right? And that is a legitimate concern. But going wide right now in a period of complete disillusionment is what we should be doing. And I look at Los Angeles and I'm like, why aren't we primarying every single rep? If we lose them all, who gives a shit? Who gives a fuck? Okay, so what? We have 10 people now that have experience running for Congress. Who gives a fuck? But everyone wants to guarantee victory. So they keep their fucking, they're like, oh, let's use all our resources on one small little thing. And it's like, no, you need to go wide. And yeah, a lot of them are going to lose. But the more we spread them out, the more the donors are going to be overtaxed. That's the other thing that people don't get. Is that when you have an uncharismatic, unpopular centrist and you put your best socialist against them, they're going to have a good fighting chance because all the donor money is going to be concentrated. But if you primary everyone and they're all uncharismatic, uncharismatic centrists, they're going to get fucked up because the donors are going to be overtaxed. They're going to get annoyed. They only have a certain amount of capacity. And the other thing is the television ad space, and there's only so many ads to go around. This is the other thing that people don't seem to understand. The more people you run, you can't buy television for just one congressional district. You have to buy the LA market if you're running for Congress in LA. Do you know how much that costs? That's the most expensive market in the fucking country outside of New York. So the more people you run, the less they're able to use air power, meaning like big donor money on things like television. You need to go wide. And then grassroots shit, knocking doors, that stuff actually starts to pay off because there's so much cacophony of bullshit being yelled about every district. People are just like, oh my God, shut the fuck up. But again, people don't think like this. They don't think big. The left is chronically afraid of taking even small L's. Yes, exactly. Stop being embarrassed by losing. Every movement loses a lot before it wins. Who gives a fuck? Who cares? As long as you aren't destroyed, you're still in the fight.
And after this new deadly shooting by ICE agents in Minnesota and a clear and growing backlash to what people are seeing on the videos coming out, there's also new data suggesting that support for the agency is falling even further. CNN's Harry Ensign's running the numbers on this. Harry, how much has changed in terms of ICE and then versus now?
Yeah, I'm not really surprised that President Trump is sending Tom Homan in because ICE, DHS, Kristi Noem have been a political disaster because just take a look here. I mean, ICE's net approval rating during Trump's term, you go back to term number one, look, it's pretty even at 0 points. You go to June 2025, right? That was when all that stuff was going on in Los Angeles. They dropped down, look at this, minus 17 points, way in the basement. But then after Minneapolis, it's even lower, minus 27 points on the net approval rating of ICE. Of course, this all being done under Kristi Noem. So, no, what's going on in Minneapolis is not popular at all. What's been going on during this second term under ICE, under the Trump administration, under Kristi Noem, very much not been popular, and it's only been getting more and more unpopular.
What about DHS kind of more broadly?
Yeah, okay, so, we're going to start down low. We'll start with ICE, and then we'll raise it to DHS. And again, it's just the same exact story, right? DHS is doing an excellent or good job, the Department of Homeland Security. During Trump's first term, look where it was in late 2017, right about at this point. 59%, that's pretty gosh darn good. But look at where it is now in Trump term number 2. By late last year, it was down to 42%. So this is the same story that we're seeing no matter which poll question we look at. The popularity of ICE, of DHS, has completely fallen under the second term, the second Trump administration, where what we were seeing during Trump's term number 1 was, hey, ICE, DHS, pretty popular, certainly not unpopular, but all the actions in Minneapolis, in Los Angeles, in these major American cities have been very much rejected by the American people. It has been a political disaster for the second Trump administration.
And now, I mean, as Berman was just reading what the president was just sending out, he's now sending in Tom Homan. His borders are into Minnesota, which leads to questions of what about the leadership of the Secretary of Homeland Security, who has inserted herself very publicly to be kind of front and center in all of these operations.
Yeah, as I said at the top, I just think there's a real reason for it. And that's because Kristi Noem, simply put, Kate, has not been popular, and everything she's done for the most part has not been popular. I mean, just look at her net approval rating. In July of 2025, it was minus 11 points. It's actually gotten more unpopular now at minus 16 points. I looked at every single that has been conducted on Kristi Noem's popularity. Every single one, the net approval rating has been negative. ICE is negative. DHS is negative. As I said at the top, Kate, this has been an absolute political disaster for the President of the United States. It's not much of a surprise to me if he wants to.
All right. I don't personally believe in having polls like this, which is like where you ask people for their tactical political advice for what Congress should do. I personally think these kind of polls are fucking stupid. But this one agrees with me, so I guess we'll look at it. Do you think Democrats in Congress should hold out for cuts in funding for the Department of Homeland Security, including for the U.S. Immigrations and Customs Enforcement, ICE, before agreeing to a spending bill to avert a government shutdown? Okay, what the fuck is this mouthful of a question? Yes, they should, 41. No, they should not, 32. Not sure, 27. The answer is 11% net say we should. So in other words, people do not give a fuck. They want this shit to end. This is such a dumb question. Holy shit. This is such bad polling. Holy fuck. That's stupid.
And after this new deadly shooting by ICE agents in Minnesota and a clear and growing backlash to what people are seeing on the videos coming out, there's also new data suggesting that support for the agency is falling even further. CNN's Harry Enton's running the numbers on this. Harry, how much has changed in terms of ICE and in terms of ICE, you know, then versus now?
Yeah, I'm not really surprised that President Trump is sending Tom Homan in because ICE, DHS, Kristi Noem have been a political disaster because just take a look here. I mean, ICE's net approval rating during Trump's term, you go back to term number one, look, it's pretty even at 0 points. You go to June 2025, right? That was when all that stuff was going on in Los Angeles. They dropped down, look at this, minus 17 points, way in the basement. But then after Minneapolis, it's even lower, minus.
So what I want you to understand, chat, is that when the left protests, the entire year of 2024 was acclaimed by centrist Democrats like Destiny, Biden, like Harris, like every Democratic politician, that when the left is protesting, it's so bad for us. Oh, you guys make all these demands, and oh, it's so terrible when you make demands, blah, 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 blah. Meanwhile, we won. They beat Trump in 2020 when the George Floyd protests were going on. And they lost in 2024 when they were claiming they need to be centrists. And when we go out there and we fight ICE, it destroys their approval. Every single thing these centrist commentators and politicians say is proven wrong time and time and time again. What people want is change.
It's 27 points on the net approval rating of ICE. Of course, this all being done under Kristi Noem. So, no, what's going on?
Developing story, yeah. ICE apparently shot some woman in the hand, injuring her. It just happened this morning. So, you know, we don't know if it was a rubber bullet. I think I'm hearing reports that it was a rubber bullet. So it might just be an injury. All I'm saying is the violent damage of ICE is still continuing.
Minneapolis is not popular at all. What's been going on during this second term under ICE, under the Trump administration, under Kristi Noem, very much not been popular, and it's only been getting more and more unpopular.
What about DHS kind of more broadly?
Yeah, okay, so, you know, we're going to start down low. We'll start with ICE, and then we'll raise it to DHS. And again, it's just the same exact story, right? DHS is doing an excellent or good job, the Department of Homeland Security. During Trump's first term, look where it was in late 2017, right about at this point. 59%, that's pretty gosh darn good. But look at where it is now in Trump term number 2. By late last year, it was down to 42%. So this is the same story that we're seeing no matter which poll question we look at. The popularity of ICE, of DHS, has completely fallen under the second term, the second Trump administration, where what we were seeing during Trump's term number 1 was, hey, ICE, DHS, pretty popular, certainly not unpopular, but all the actions in Minneapolis, in Los Angeles, in these major American cities have been very much rejected by the American people. It has been a political disaster for the second Trump administration.
Well, and now, I mean, as Berman was just reading what the president was just sending out, he's now sending in Tom Homan, his border czar, into Minnesota, which leads to questions of what about the leadership of the Secretary of Homeland Security, who has inserted herself very publicly to be kind of front and center in all of these operations.
Yeah, as I said at the top, I just think there's a real reason for it, and that's because Kristi Noem, simply put, Kate, has not been popular, and everything she's done for the most part has not been popular. I mean, just look at her net approval rating. In July of 2025, it was minus 11 points. It's actually gotten more unpopular now at minus 16 points. I looked at every single that has been conducted on Kristi Noem's popularity. Every single one, the net approval rating has been negative. ICE is negative. DHS is negative. As I said at the top, Kate, this has been an absolute political disaster for the President of the United States. It's not much of a surprise to me if he wants to push Noem to the side, Kate.
No, and remember, this is one of the things, broadly speaking about immigration, and his crackdown of it was something he ran on and won on when it came to the last election. So
that's not what he won on. He won on the economy being shit. And the Democrats kept saying, no, the economy's good, actually. And people were like, no, it's not. And that is the reality. And then Trump said it's because of the immigrants. So, and then on top of it, the other factor, I mean, it's a very complicated whenever a presidential election occurs and 350 million people in the country. I don't think there's one thing that can tell you why it did or didn't happen a certain way. But one of the factors was the disillusionment of the youth because of the Gaza genocide and Kamala Harris's steadfast refusal to even criticize Israel in a serious way. Like, give me a fucking break with the simplistic stupidity, not terminating cliche bullshit.
A shift in changes has been. Let's see what else the president says today. Harry, these numbers really tell a story today. Thank you.
Well, Stephen Collinson joining me now. Good to have you, Stephen. In your latest analysis on CNN Digital, you write, and I quote, "A moment of national reckoning is building over the principles embedded in America's moral and legal foundations, which will be extolled this year in celebrations of the 250th anniversary of the Declaration of Independence." Just expand, if you will.
Yeah, I think what we're seeing here is a classic American clash between federal and state power. These scenes would be particularly shocking anywhere in the world. The fact they're taking place in the United States adds another dimension. First of all, although this incident does not affect the lives of hundreds of millions of Americans, despite the wide scope of the immigration crackdown, everyone can see it on their phones, and everyone can see that the federal government, the Trump administration, is not telling the truth about what happened. So that's the political impact. The second one is there's something particular in the American political psyche, I think, about this tussle between federal and state power. It goes right back to the founding of the United States. Agents appear to be infringing, in some ways, the Fourth Amendment, which is about unreasonable search of someone's home. That was the fun.
That's not what the Fourth Amendment is about. The Fourth Amendment is about restraining government agents from infringing on your privacy, upon your rights, upon you as a person, without any evidence that you have committed any offenses against the public. Okay, and there needs to be a judicial process with probable cause that you have actually committed something. Okay, that's the essence of the Fourth Amendment. The essence of the Fourth Amendment is, a best way to describe it is the presumption of innocence and a right to privacy. You basically, government agents don't get to search your shit because they feel like it.
One of the fundamental issues that led to the American Revolution, with British troops coming into Americans' homes. So this is something that is very sensitive. You're seeing a lot of concern, I think, not just among Democrats, a very progressive state of Minnesota, but among Republicans about this attempt by the Trump administration to impose ruthless and unaccountable federal power on a state. And I think that is one of the reasons why this is going to have political ramifications.
There are, of course, conflicting accounts of what happened playing out here. And these, of course, do very much play into the issue of public trust.
Yeah, and I think if you look at the first one of these incidents, the killing of Renee Good less than 3 weeks ago in Minnesota, The administration did the same thing. When something happens, they immediately come out, call someone a domestic terrorist. They're trying to set the narrative. They argue that the federal officers who are trying to enforce immigration law were threatened. And then it emerges that it appears they weren't. And everyone can see that from these multi-angle videos. There's no expectation, I think, that the government is going to tell the truth about this, as Andrew McCabe said. I think you could also argue that the way they handled the first incident with the killing of Rene Good clearly did not send a message to these federal agents from out of state on the streets that they should act with some restraint. Anyone can see that what the administration said about this, that he was showing up to massacre police, doesn't seem to be the truth when they actually see it unfold.
This news is sadly going to be put on the back burner when the American Armada starts bombing Iran in the next couple days. Even if they start bombing Iran, it's not going to go on the back burner because people are going to continue to resist ICE
with their own eyes. But this
even
is an administration that's never really told the truth. Trump has documented, as having uttered thousands of falsehoods over his 10 years since he came on the national stage.
Stephen, while I've got you, I do want to explore the following. There's an interesting angle to this story involving the right to carry a gun. This is a right enshrined in the Second Amendment that Trump and many of his followers staunchly support. Here's what the chief of the border forces had to say about that issue. Have a listen.
We respect that Second Amendment right, but those rights don't count when you riot and assault, delay, obstruct law enforcement officers. It's too bad the concept be paid because he injected himself into that crime scene.
What are people making of those caveats just presented there around the right to carry a gun in this situation?
Well, it's turning a lot of the normal political dialogues on their head and showing hypocrisy from some of the people in the central government. Alex Preddy had the right to carry a gun, as any American does. In Minnesota, he also had the right to a concealed weapon. He had the license that you would need to do that. There's no...
Well, he was also a VA intensive care nurse. He's about as successful of a human being as you can be, as far as a solid professional middle-class person that does everything right. And he was murdered on the street. If a VA intensive care nurse can be murdered on the street in cold blood, then who the fuck is safe? He was one of the best of us. By the way, chat, look at the gear they're wearing. They're wearing gear like they anticipate resistance. And I gotta tell you, chat, while this stuff isn't free, it's not that expensive to get about 95% of the way to as geared as these guys. And I can tell you that any injury they give you from less than lethal munitions, from rubber bullets, chemical agents, is going to be a hell of a lot more expensive to treat at the hospital than it will be if you take prophylactic measures. Buy yourself the appropriate gear. It's a lot cheaper than a fucking medical deductible.
Sign, at least on all of the videos we've seen, that he walked up to officers brandishing a gun, and it seems from some of the videos that he was disarmed before he was shot. So that's the circumstances of this. Of course, the National Rifle Association and other pro-gun groups have raised concern, and these are groups that are very powerful in Republican politics, about the administration's comments, because it appears that what Preddy was doing was fulfilling his constitutional right to carry a weapon. He didn't threaten the police with it or the federal agents. So this, I think, will be a source of pressure on the Republicans and the Trump administration from inside their own coalition, which has also already shown signs of weakening since the turn of the year. And of course, there is the irony of progressive politicians defending Preddy's right to carry a gun and to have a concealed weapon and to show up at a protest, even though in most normal circumstances, many of those leaders would be questioning, I think, the Second Amendment and would prefer tighter restrictions on the use of guns. But I think it just shows there's so much in this story that is quintessentially American in terms of the underlying politics of all this.
We're in a moment of opportunity for the left. I want to show you something, chat. Graham Plattner You know, I told you that I had concerns about Graham Plattner and I wanted to wait and see. Well, I've waited and I've seen. And I'm not going to let some like rad libs tell me that I should support a man who is out here on the right side of the issues, anti-Venezuelan intervention, calling out ICE as being murderers. On issue after issue, Graham Plattner has distinguished himself with the right take.
ICE is murdering American citizens, beating and kidnapping people who are in this country legally, creating databases of activists and labeling them as domestic terrorists. It is daily smashing the First and Fourth Amendments and with no material consequence. And yet we watch leaders and structures of power fail to comprehend the moment in history we are actually in. But you know who isn't failing to comprehend it? Us. And this is where my anger turns to hope. We understand that it isn't courts who are keeping people from being ripped out of their homes in the arms of their loved ones. It is communities. Community rapid response teams, volunteer reporting networks, mutual aid networks, organizers, and activists who are rising to their moment in history.
And obviously the Nazi tattoo was a huge fucking L, but I think the lesson to learn from that was that's where our American military is right now. And it's a wake-up call. And instead of trying to discipline the guy who turned against that programming and fought against it, maybe we should be focused on the institution being full of fascists that has the right to have fucking tanks and artillery and drones. Maybe we should focus on that institution where they're legalizing Nazi swastika tattoos. Or the fact that the American military tells its officers to memorize Nazi general quotes for leadership development. Maybe we should be focusing on that. And his politics, but compared to almost every other senator, are pretty damn good. So I have critical support for Graham Plattner. I want him to be connected to the grassroots left. I don't want him to be alienated. A certain Aussie is now going after Grant. I believe that Bad Empanada is a CIA op. Like, I'm not even kidding. I'm not even, this is unironically what I believe. He's in Australia, he's in Argentina as a white Australian man. And his entire focus is on attacking the people that are against American imperialism and American politics. If you want America to stop interfering, like if AOC won the presidency, she would end the Cuba embargo. She would close Guantanamo Bay. Like, do you understand that? She would lift the sanctions on Venezuela, most likely. You understand that we're talking about a completely different foreign policy? They would be putting tremendous pressure on Israel. They would be protecting the United Nations and the International Criminal Court. She very likely would try to sign the Rome Statute. Major political gains the leftists have been trying to make in international affairs would go along with that. Like, I'm sorry, she would do some things I don't like. She probably would keep funding the American military at some sort of level that I think is way too high. But the reality is, like, if you think that an AOC presidency would be no different than Donald Trump, you're fucking stupid. You're fucking stupid. It doesn't mean that she would end the American empire, but the American empire in retreat is huge for left-wing movements all around the world. Take the first step, invite Plattner on your stream. So fun if you get it before Hassan. I'm considering it. I don't know if they want me to. As of this morning, Australia YouTuber using the ICE shooting to attack Assad comments are talking about Hassan as a white liberal who supports the Iraq war. Actual propaganda. Yes. Adam Panada has fallen into... One of the things about being a Twitch streamer or a YouTuber... Oh, somebody's saying something in a lot of Chinese. I can't translate that. All right, hold on. Let me try to translate, chat. let's go detect language to English. After being invaded by the 8-Nation Alliance and experiencing the warlord era during the Republic of China, China's population was comparable to that of the current United States, numbering hundreds of millions. Then the Japanese came and massacred 35 million of our people, 10% of the population. Even so, we still dared to resist the corrupt Kuomintang regime that kowtowed to Britain and the United States and followed the Communist Party in fighting a civil war against the Kuomintang. The pursuit of a better life is a common dream for humanity, but simply wishing or holding protest signs cannot solve fundamental problems. Revolution requires bloodshed and sacrifice. I mean, I agree completely. I mean, obviously, I completely agree that the Chinese people are the most advanced in the world. Like, we all agree with that here. Like, we're not. That's why I'm called the Central Committee. The Central Committee is like, do you think I picked that by accident in 2019 when all the rest of you were going, oh my God, China is so evil? I'm sorry that I'm so far ahead of you. Mike from Beijing, but he's never actually been to Beijing. All right, let's keep watching about ICE approval being dog shit.
Push Noam to the side, Kate.
No, and remember, this is one of the things, broadly speaking, about immigration, and his crackdown of it was something he ran on and won on when it came to the last election. So what a shift in changes has been. Let's see what else the president says today. Harry, these numbers really tell a story today. Thank you.
Well, Stephen Collinson joining me now. Good to have you, Stephen. In your latest analysis on CNN Digital, you write, and I quote, a moment of national reckoning is building over the principles embedded in America's moral and legal foundations, which will be extolled this year in celebrations of the 250th anniversary of the Declaration of Independence. Just expand, if you will.
Yeah, I think what we're seeing here is a classic American clash between federal and state power. These scenes would be particularly shocking anywhere in the world. The fact they're taking place in the United States adds another dimension. First of all, although this incident does not affect the lives of hundreds of millions of Americans, despite the wide scope of the immigration crackdown, everyone can see it on their phones, and everyone can see that the federal government, the Trump administration, is not telling the truth about what happened. So that's the political impact. The second one is there's something particular in the American political psyche, I think, about this tussle between federal and state power. It goes right back to the founding of the United States. Agents appear to be infringing, in some ways, the Fourth Amendment, which is about unreasonable search of someone's home. That was one of the fundamental issues that led to the American Revolution, with British troops coming into Americans' homes. So this is something that is very sensitive. You're seeing a lot of concern, I think, not just among Democrats, a very progressive state of Minnesota, but among Republicans about this attempt by the Trump administration to impose ruthless and unaccountable federal power on a state. And I think that is one of the reasons why this is going to have political ramifications.
There are, of course, conflicting accounts of what happened playing out here. And these, of course, do very much play into the issue of public trust.
Yeah, and I think if you look at the first one of these incidents, the killing of Rene Good less than 3 weeks ago in Minnesota, the administration did the same thing. When something happens, they immediately come out, call someone a domestic terrorist. They're trying to set the narrative. They argue that the federal officers who are trying to enforce immigration law were threatened. And then it emerges that it appears they weren't, and everyone can see that.
Okay, wait, did we just rewatch? I'm so sorry, chat. I'm so sorry. I was like, wait a minute. I'm hearing the British guy again. Savvy on his Insta story said, if you agree with the murder of Freddie, to unfollow him. Can you link me that? Thank you. I'm so sorry, chat. What the fuck? Why did I like massively click back? What the fuck is going on? Okay. Sorry about that. Jesus Christ. I was looking at the next story and I was like, wait a minute. I heard this before. President could get assassinated mid press conference and you wouldn't notice. Yes, I would. Yes, I would. I'm sorry. I'm my own producer. Sometimes the mask slips. Do you know how hard it is to try to accurately parse what's going on right now while making a show at the same exact time? You motherfuckers could never do it in a million fucking years. I want you to know that. If you want to know what I was doing off screen, I was making a tweet making fun of Destiny. Destiny posted this.
Yeah, all of the weird, obsessive Hassan posting about Israel. ICE uses Israel spyware and is actively... Hassan,
which is all true.
Problem is that Hassan fucked up because he couldn't accurately call out the administration when the election time came around because he just wanted to talk about Israel. So Hassan has no moral platform. Truly, if Hassan gave a fuck about U.S. politics, he would just go back to Turkey, or he would off himself, like get himself off of the political scene. Is what I mean by that. He has no right. He has no place to speak about American politics right now, given how he abused his platform for clout and Valkyrie's pussy or whatever. He has no excuse for it. So, not only right, should we recognize that he has no place to talk about politics there. The fact that he so desperately wants to bring it back to Israel and Gaza, and he so desperately wants to like bring this issue back because it's like the only thing that he felt like he kind of had more clarity on. It's like it's so transparently obvious how pathetic he is, and trying to make it about that. Yeah, I don't know. It's just cringe as fuck. I don't know. It's cringe as fuck. Jesus Christ, it's cringe as fuck.
So Destiny outright supported the genocide. He went to IDF soldiers and told them not to film their war crimes. He said that it would be irrelevant. The Gaza genocide would be irrelevant, and he predicted that Kamala Harris would win the election. What I want you to understand is that the centrist Democrats can feel their hold on the entire Democratic Party base slipping. But the one thing they have in their pocket is the idea that people who hate Republicans voted for Kamala Harris that are normal, which I totally understand. I understand why. I'm not mad at people for voting for Kamala Harris out of a harm reduction. I'm not mad that you did that. I think that was a reasonable thing to do. However, I have a political voice, and I try to be a tribune of the people that are voiceless. And there is a large population of people that could not support the Democratic Party because they were doing a genocide in Gaza. And Kamala Harris said she would continue it. And I'm sorry, I'm not going to sacrifice 100,000 children on the altar of Kamala Harris's ambition. Sorry, not sorry. And they're trying to conflate that stance with saying that there's no difference between Trump and Kamala Harris. Of course there is a difference between Trump and Kamala Harris. The problem is that Kamala Harris can't beat Trump. The problem is Hillary Clinton can't beat Trump. The problem was Joe Biden can't beat Trump. That was the problem. The problem is that the American people have to believe that you will deliver change. And the thing about Destiny is the reason why he's so focused on us is because he can't actually debate any of the issues on the merits. He tried to say Israel wasn't committing genocide. He tried to say Israel wasn't committing war crimes. He's had to abandon that position. He tried to say Joe Biden was a good candidate. He had to abandon that position as even centrist Democrats forced Joe Biden out of the race. Every single position he makes, when he actually tries to stake out a real position that's not relative to me or relative to Hassan, he's wrong on. And the reason why he continues to stalk us, and if you're new to my community, you may not know this, chat, but the reason why I'm a big streamer is because I kept beating Destiny in debates. I kept beating Destiny in debates. The first time I debated Destiny was my second stream on this entire platform. I became a big streamer because he kept losing to me in debates. I want to give you an example of that. And he's fixated on me and Hassan for 7 years because we humiliated him. And he was made irrelevant because he's uneducated. He's functionally illiterate. And when he debated us, this is what it sounded like.
It's such an unbelievably stupid. He just doesn't know anything.
You came in committed to a viewpoint that AOC was economically illiterate.
AOC is economically illiterate because she said that the money spent on stock buyback should be spent on labor.
My dad ran a small business. And whenever we had a good year in the small business, we tried to pay our secretaries more, or we tried to invest more in things for the business.
Which is a dumb statement to make that shows you have no idea how anything in economics works. What would drive you to make these statements?
I want to pause it here and just say that stock buybacks as we have right now were illegal until the Reagan administration. So the stock buyback regime we have now came in with Ronald Reagan because originally it was considered to be stock manipulation. Companies could buy back the shares, thereby lowering the dilution, lowering the float of lowering the float of the shares. That is legal. But they had to do what was called fixed bid stock buybacks. So basically, the company would say, we're going to buy $1 billion of shares at $31. They were allowed to do that, right? A share. But what Ronald Reagan allowed them to do is say, we're going to buy 1 billion shares at market. And if you know anything about bid-ask spreads or how markets actually operate, when you just come in and throw a whole bunch of money immediately into a commodity or a stock or whatever that's being sold from bids, it buys out all the people offering shit actively, and that causes the stock price or the underlying price to spike because there is a big flood of money all at once. And it's a friction we have in our markets. When people do stock buybacks like that, they can oftentimes spike the stock price in the short term. And a lot of executives and CEOs are incentivized based, like they get paid bonuses based on what the stock price is. So they do this thing where they take the company's money and they use it to buy back stock, which causes the stock price to spike. And then they get bonuses and they get, options vesting and they get paid. So now they have a conflict.
First of all, it's not dumb as
It is dumb as to expect a company to return profits to its workers.
As a CEO of a major company, I can take that money and I don't have to do that at all, right? I can actually have the company buy its own stock on the market, right? Yeah. That would effectively increase the stock price, right? And I've done nothing to make my product more valuable, my employees more happy. I haven't invested in the training or the workforce, but I've inflated the stock price, right? Absolutely right. So my question is, how is this different from a pyramid scheme? No, that's a very good question.
That's why I said AOC is a... Not to mention, wait, I don't even know what this has to do with stock buybacks at this point.
They are incentivized for short-term stock gains over long-term investment. It's better that dividends are paid because it's usually a taxable event. Not always, but usually. You could structure your sales during that spike in the price.
You could also get ultra by the SEC because this is called insider trading, Mike.
Oh, you could structure it. You just,
no, you
I'm going to sell. Yes, you can.
Oh my God, it's just the most...
Oh my God. Do you know how it works?
I guess I don't, Mike. When these people sell their capital, eventually they will pay taxes on it. But again, if you want to talk about...
Why would they sell? Why would they sell? You borrow against the value of your shares.
Taxable...
You don't have to liquidate. You can borrow against the value.
Okay,
and you don't pay any taxes on borrowing. So right there, you're just wrong. Like if I own $1 billion, do you think, wait a minute.
Why would I borrow against the value of my investment? Can you even do this?
Because you don't have to pay any taxes on it. That's why. If you borrow against the value of your shares, you never have to pay taxes.
Somebody in chat has to tell me, bro. I'm not going to take his word for it. Somebody in chat, do you borrow against the value of...
The ultra-wealthy use loan money to fund their lifestyle. Average people need income to pay for basics, like housing and food. But the ultra-wealthy don't. They can just live on borrowed cash.
It's like one of the most fundamental parts of our economy.
Okay. Oh, he doesn't know anything.
I can't believe you don't know that rich people take loans against their...
I don't think any rich person does this. What?
What?
You can't just do that willy-nilly.
Yes, you can.
No.
Of course you can.
No, you can't. These are tax-advantaged investment accounts. You cannot just take loans against them. That's the whole point of these tax-advantaged accounts.
Destiny, you're arguing against a position I don't have. If you are rich, if you're Jeff Bezos, does you think he liquidates his shares to buy...
Yes, he needs liquid cash because that's how we purchase things in the United States. You use currency to do it. And I'm going to take out a secured loan against my investments?
Yeah, why wouldn't you?
Because I don't want to pay interest with cash they already have. Why the f would I pay interest when I have money in an investment? Why would I take out a loan from the bank and use my own investments to secure that loan and then pay interest to the bank when I could just liquidate my own shares, Mike? Why the f would this is the dumbest thing I've ever heard in my entire life.
By the way, he asked me a question. He thinks he's making a really strong argument, but he's asking me a question that's very basic. And the fact that he doesn't know the answer to it shows you how stupid he is. And this is how he talks about this is him on every issue. He doesn't know anything at all.
Because you don't have to pay taxes when you take a loan, but if you liquidated stuff that you have a capital gain in, you'll have to pay taxes. That's why.
He just doesn't know anything. I don't know why the f I'm watching this. It's okay.
So if you're ever wondering, like, why is Destiny so obsessed with insulting Mike and Hassan 24/7, freaking out constantly? Because when he actually debated us, he was a fucking moron. Do you think he was like intelligent and that's why everybody left him to go watch Hassan? That's the cope he tells himself. But when you actually go and look back at the debates of what we said, whether we were right or wrong, now, does it mean I got every single thing right and every perfect? I'm not God. I'm not omniscient. When you look at our analysis, when you look at our arguments, when you look at the way history carried forward, if you look at the way that I predicted that if they go to the center in 2020, it would be a disaster and cause fascism to grow even more, everything I said came true. And when we actually talked about policy on the merits, on the issues, he doesn't know basic facts. So that's why he spends his time saying, harassing us, calling for Hassan's death, talking about people's personal lives,
stupid.
Lying about people's personal lives, creating false narratives, whether it's about me and Bad Bunny or Hassan and the dog collar. It's all made up. Everything he did, it's totally made up. It's completely false. It's totally bullshit. But it is a useful lie that you can tell people and they believe it. It's called deceptive image or deceptive video persuasion. You have a video, you have an image, you create a story over it, an interpretation of an ambiguous event, and then people believe it. It's called lying is OP. But I don't have to lie. I could just show our debate straight up, and he's a fucking moron. You can go ahead and paste this in any Destiny post. He's fucking a moron. And the other thing is, he's now having to go like, oh, AOC is based. AOC is based. Hassan and Mike hate AOC. AOC is based because the Democratic Party has moved so far to the left. The base is so far in my direction. He started out his career with me saying AOC is economically illiterate. And now he has to try to pretend that AOC and I and Hassan, we just don't like her now. We're so far. We're such tanky radicals. Right's gone, Saj. Do you have a good story on that? About the injured woman whose figures got destroyed by ICE? Have I seen this? Xi's purge of China's military brings its top general down. Yeah, I heard about this. I did hear about this. Apparently, Xi prosecuted the top general for being a spy. Apparently, he leaked nuclear weapons plans to the U.S. The general Zhang Yuixa is a vice chairman of the Central Military Commission, the Communist Party body that controls China's armed forces. Another member of that commission, General Li Zhen Li, who leads the military's joint staff department, is also under investigation. Is the most drastic step so far in Mr. Xi's years-long campaign to root out what he described as corruption and disloyalty in the military's senior ranks. It is all the more astonishing because General Zhang seemed to be a confidant of Mr. Xi, who has known him for decades. This move is unprecedented in the history of the Chinese military and represents the total annihilation of the high command, said Christopher K. Johnson, former CIA analyst who follows Chinese elite politics. Xi has now removed all but one of the 6 generals he appointed to the commission in 2022. Mr. Johnson, the president of China's Strategies Group, a consulting firm, said Mr. Xi seemed to have concluded that the problems in the military ran so deep that he could not trust the top command to cure itself and must look to a new cohort of rising officers. He appears to have decided he must cut very deep generationally to find a group that is not tainted. The purging of even a childhood friend and Zhang Yuixa shows there is no limits to Xi's anti-graft zeal. The idea that it's a purge or whatever, I don't know, but I do know that in the 90s, a lot of people believed that China was going to go the way of the Soviet Union, where it was going to implode and there was going to be a bunch of well-positioned communists who could therefore buy up, like, you know, state-run enterprise and become billionaire oligarchs, right? And that did not happen. That's why the United States was so happy to trade with China, because they thought all the communists were all imploding. They were all lying about being communists. And Xi is coming in and reasserting socialism in the party and finding people that were corrupted, that took bribes, that spied against China. And that's crazy. This could be a big blow to morale inside the PLA. He must have been an agent. This guy is definitely a CIA agent. The way they're annihilating the Central, they're doing a purge, it's gonna blow up morale. He must have been a CIA asset. They're all coming out like, no, he was such a good Chinese commander of the military. There is no one right now at the highest level who has operational experience who is in charge of training and exercises. This is going to cut very deep. There's more to come, possibly. Okay, any military that relies on one guy is a fucking stupid military. The entire purpose of a military is that everybody is replaceable, because it's a military. You don't know if somebody's going to take a bullet. Like, what? Doesn't mean that some people aren't more talented or better leaders than others. That's absolutely true. But this is so funny to read. But Mr. Xi's worries about the trustworthiness of his commander seem to finally outweigh whatever attachment he felt to the general. I think this reflects Xi Jinping's personal sense of insecurity, and that's a major factor in his purges of the military, he said. Portrait of Vice President Xi Jinping, ambitious survivor of the Cultural Revolution. Is sexually ambitious and the eye on the prize from early adulthood and made up for lost time by having fun. Unlike many youth who made up for lost time by having fun after the Cultural Revolution, Xi chose to survive by becoming redder than the red. He joined the party and began mapping out a career plan that would take him to the top of the system. In our contact's view, Xi is a supremely pragmatic and a realist, driven not by ideology, but a combination of ambition and self-protection. Xi is a true elitist at heart, according to our contact, believing that rule by a dedicated and committed Communist Party leadership is the key to enduring social stability and national strength. The most permanent influences shaping Xi's worldview for his princeling pedigree and formative years growing up with families of first-generation CCP revolutionary and Beijing's exclusive residential compounds. Our contact is convinced that Xi has a genuine sense of entitlement, believing that members of his generation are the legitimate heirs to the revolutionary achievements of their parents and therefore deserve to rule China. Xi is not corrupt and does not care about money, but could only be corrupted by power in our contact's view. Xi at one point early in his career was quite taken with Buddhist mysticism, displaying a fascination with and knowledge of Buddhist martial arts and mystical powers said to aid health. The contact stated that Xi is very familiar with the West, including the United States, and has a favorable outlook toward the United States. He also understands Taiwan and the Taiwan people from his long tenure as an official of Fujian province. End of summary. And then they're talking about the agent and who he is. Unlike those in social circles the professor ran in, this is the CIA agent. Unlike the CIA agent, Xi Jinping could not talk about women in movies and did not drink or do drugs. Xi was considered of only average intelligence, the professor said, and not as smart as the professor's peer group. Women thought Xi was boring. The professor never felt completely relaxed around Xi, who seemed extremely driven. Nevertheless, despite Xi's lack of popularity in the conventional sense and his cold and calculating demeanor in his early years, the professor said Xi was not cold-hearted. He was still considered a good guy in other ways. He was outwardly friendly, always knew the answers to questions, and would always take care of you. Wait, he wasn't smart, but he always knew the answers to the questions? Huh? The professor surmised that Xi's newfound popularity today, which the professor found surprising, must stem in part from Xi being generous and loyal. Xi also does not care at all about money and is not corrupt. Xi could afford to be incorruptible, the professor wryly noted, given that he was born with a silver spoon in his mouth. Yeah, guys, rich people, famously uncorruptible. Xi knows how very corrupt China is and is repulsed by the all-encompassing commercialization of the Chinese economy with its attendant nouveau riche, official corruption, loss of values, dignity, and self-respect, and moral evils such as drugs and prostitution, the professor stated. The professor speculated that if Xi were to become party general secretary, he would likely aggressively attempt to address these evils, perhaps at the expense of the new moneyed class. So according to the CIA, Xi Jinping, a nice, generous person who always knows the answers, doesn't care about money, cannot be corrupted. Oh my God, dude. We are fucking cooked. That is so funny. Can you imagine the Ministry of State Security, which is the equivalent of China's CIA, that's China's CIA, doing a doing a report on Trump? Donald Trump is a pedophile sex criminal who is extremely corrupt and extremely greedy. Everybody hates him. He's a total fucking asshole. He's a draft dodger. He doesn't believe in anything. He hates everybody. He's jealous, and he's very low intelligence. The dumbest man we've ever profiled. Holy fuck, that would be funny. I would love to read China's files on U.S. officials. Incredible. Incredible stuff. Incredible stuff. So I want to show you something, chat, to make you... I love Ed Norton. Edward Norton is a fucking king.
These are not normal times, and it's like we have extrajudicial like assaults on Americans and humans going on a daily basis now, and it's not okay. And even though all people kind of have to put one foot in front of the other and deal with the demands of the day, we cannot act like this is not happening. And I think I think what they're doing in Minnesota with the strike needs to expand. I think we should be talking about a national general economic strike until this is over and stopped. These are not normal times. And
what a fucking king. What a fucking king. Damn, he's so cool. Ed Norton joined DSA. Oh my God, chat. The funniest thing just popped up on my feed. Fuck yeah, this is based. The office of Rep. Gustenclamp Concentration Camp Perez, the administrative co-chair of the Blue Dogs Coalition, is seeking a communication director to join her official staff. This position serves as a member of the senior staff team, working closer with the member, chief of staff, legislative director, operations director, and district director, develop and execute an external communications plan that effectively communicates the unique district and messaging of Representative Gustenclamp Perez. This role oversees all press relations and active social media operations, speeches, ranked communications, newsletters, and all other communication needs of the office. This position is expected to work non-traditional hours and to regularly travel between D.C. and Southwest Washington. Position can be based in the district or D.C. office. This is another way of saying her communications director quit. Marie Goose Step Perez. Holy shit. So even the Nepo babies of the Democratic Party's consultant class understand that she is fucking radioactive now that she voted to support ICE. Good fucking luck. Mexico glaze? We watched this already, chat. We talked about this. We actually watched this exact clip.
Let's take you to Minneapolis with MS Now national reporter David Noriega. We're also joined by our senior legal reporter Lisa Rubin, former D.C. Homeland Security and Intel Chief Danelle Harvin, and former federal prosecutor and former lawyer at the DOJ National Security Division, Brendan Ballou. David, what's the latest on the ground there in Minnesota this morning?
Anna, I'm standing right in front of the exact location where Alex Preddy was shot and killed by Border Patrol agents on Saturday. What you see behind me is a shrine, a memorial in his honor. As you see, there's a tremendous amount of flowers, candles, handmade signs. The reaction from the community to this killing has been intensely emotional, mostly from what I've seen, somber, mournful. Yesterday, we saw, I think, smaller crowds coming out to protest this than I and many people expected. Excuse me, Anna. I think that's attributable to a couple of things. First of all, there's less immigration enforcement activity happening, and it's those raids, those arrests that tend to bring people out into the streets. But also some of the folks that I've been talking to who are involved in the local community organizing in response to these immigration enforcement actions have told me that they are scared as a result of this killing and scared as a result of some other intimidation and threatening tactics that they've encountered from the federal government. That said, they're also telling me that there's no intention on their part to let up on the pressure, the public pressure that they're putting the federal government to leave Minnesota, which is ultimately their desire. Anna.
We know these eyewitness accounts are so important when it comes to these ongoing investigations. David, I know it's really cold there. Thank you for bearing with us for just an extra moment. One eyewitness says they're afraid to go home because of the ICE presence. Tell us more about that account and what you're learning about the investigation this morning.
So, Anna, there was an eyewitness account filed in an affidavit, in a lawsuit filed by ACLU of Minnesota, among others, over alleged violations of protesters and observers' free speech rights. That witness account was provided by a doctor who lives somewhere on this block and say that this person is anonymous, but they say that they witnessed the killing of Alex Preddy, and they, as a doctor, a pediatrician, tried to render first aid on the scene. They say that initially the federal agents here prevented them from reaching from reaching the body of Alex Preddy. Eventually, this doctor was able to reach him, but was not able, of course, to help the situation in a meaningful sense. What this tells you, among other things, Anna, is that there are a lot of really important concerns around the way that the federal government is handling evidence in this case and generally how they're handling this investigation. It's hard to overstate how much of what's happening here is far outside of the normal established protocol of what would normally happen here. We have heard directly from DHS that ICE HSI, Homeland Security Investigations, is leading the investigation into this incident. That means DHS is investigating itself. Local and state authorities have been frozen out of the investigation. I spoke to the county attorney here yesterday who told me that the feds are pretty aggressively preventing her office and state police from investigating this case. They have sued DHS to preserve the evidence. They have also told me, the county attorney made a point of telling me repeatedly that she maintains the jurisdictional authority to investigate and potentially prosecute these agents, and that they are conducting an investigation based on the publicly available evidence in spite of the alleged obstruction from the federal government, and that if the evidence, the available evidence, leads them to conclude that they have enough evidence to charge these agents, they will do so, Anna.
We'll be talking with that county attorney later this morning. David Noriega, thank you for your great work there in Minneapolis. Lisa, in just a few hours, we're going to see this remarkable hearing meant to ensure the federal government doesn't destroy evidence from the Preddy shooting. Explain how we got here.
Well, Anna, David was just referring to the Bureau of Criminal Apprehension. That's the Minnesota state agency that gets involved anytime there is a law enforcement related use of force incident. And as they described in the lawsuit that they filed, they tried to get involved at the crime scene in the preservation of evidence, to also be involved, more importantly, in the investigation. And in a declaration that someone with the agency filed, they described being rebuffed by federal agents, not only once when they arrived on the scene, but they came armed with a search warrant from a state court, and even after presenting folks on the ground with DHS with that search warrant, the claim is that the Minnesota state agency responsible for handling these kinds of investigations was told, you are not wanted here. They promptly filed a lawsuit, and over the weekend, they obtained a temporary restraining order that prevents DHS, Border Patrol, and ICE from disposing of or altering any evidence having to do with the case, while the question of who is going to handle this investigation and with what evidence gets resolved by courts, Anna.
Brendan, David explains DHS is leading this investigation into itself. Can this administration be trusted to maintain the chain of custody for key evidence?
Well, certainly it doesn't seem like it. You know, one of the problems that you have here is that ordinarily an investigation at the federal level would be conducted by the FBI and DOJ, perhaps the Civil Rights Criminal Section. DHS has said that it's going to conduct its own investigation, but of course, the leaders of DHS and the White House seem to have already prejudged the outcome of that investigation. Stephen Miller called Alex Preddy a domestic terrorist. Greg Bovino said that the victims were the law enforcement officers, not Mr. Preddy.
So here's kind of like my general take on this, and I don't say this to be mean, I don't say this to be provocative, but I think if you support what happened, you have forfeited your rights. I think if you support the idea of a guy helping a woman up who was shoved for no fucking reason should be shot dead on the street while never once evincing any aggression whatsoever, you have lost all your rights.
It just seems that it would be hard for any line level DHS employee to conduct a reasonable investigation if they wanted to do what's right for, you know, the smart thing for their career, given what their leaders have said. I'll also just say very briefly that, you know, one of the things that I find so extraordinary here is that in having to seek the TRO, the temporary restraining order, for DHS to preserve evidence, ordinarily, it would be unquestioned that state and local authorities would cooperate with the feds here, and that the feds would have every interest in preserving the evidence. The fact that the state has so little trust in the federal government right now suggests that they're really treating DHS less as a law enforcement partner and really more how you would treat a criminal organization.
Yeah, Danelle, can you expand on that? Because I'm wondering your reaction to what seems to be an adversarial stance the feds have taken with local officials when it comes to investigating now 2 deadly shootings. How is the interplay supposed to work?
Well, quite frankly, Anna, this is vertically integrated state-sponsored violence, and the state and locals have really pushed back. We've never seen this before. And the reason why I say it's vertically integrated is because at the federal level, they're controlling the narrative, the propaganda. Some of the tweets we've seen are just outlandish, all the way down to the crime scene evidence. And when you don't have access to that, when you don't have accountability, and that's critically important. And so I've never seen this in my 30-year plus career where the state and locals had to sue the federal government to preserve evidence. It means that there is a breakdown of trust and there's a breakdown of collaboration and coordination at the state and federal local level. What the last thing I want to say is the reason why we're here is because Alex Preddy and many others are out there collecting their own evidence. Why? Because the federal authorities that are on the scene conducting these operations don't have body-worn cameras, which is a standard.
There is a certain type of, I don't know, it's a pathology. It's a pathology. The inability of these people to accept it's not about procedure. It's not about having a camera. It's not about a technology. It's about the institution itself and the Republican Party and the administration that is lawless. You're not going to make them lawful by giving them more money to buy more equipment. You have to prosecute them we already have enough video evidence. People are filming every ICE agent they can find. What we need is the state government of Minnesota to start prosecuting people for committing murder.
Enforcement item. I had one. I couldn't roll out in the street without it. It's just as important as your firearm. And they don't have BWCs, which cost about $1,000. In a year where DHS has almost a $30 billion with a B dollar budget, almost considering what FEMA has, they don't have body-worn cameras for less than $1,000 is outlandish.
Well, because of so many people out there with their cell phones documenting what is happening, we do have video evidence publicly available right now to understand how things unfold. And I want to piece together the various angles of this deadly shooting. And I'll warn viewers, The footage is disturbing. The interaction starts with Preddy filming the officers interacting with other residents. You can clearly see he's there in the brown, he's holding a phone, nothing else in his hand. Then things escalate when he intervenes to help up a woman who was pushed to the ground. And that's when officers began using physical force against him. They get him to the ground. They're hitting him. You can see Preddy's arms in front of him this whole time. And watch closely, you'll see one agent actually kind of sprint away from this scuffle with a gun in hand. Moments later, Preddy is shot several times. A source close to the DHS probe tells MS Now that Preddy had a holstered firearm and agents did retrieve it at some point during the interaction. We know he was legally licensed to carry that firearm. And here's a key moment in the immediate aftermath while agents are searching Preddy's motionless body. Listen to this. I know it's hard to hear, but when we listen closely and replay that over and over again, there at the end, it sounds like one of the officers is asking, where's the gun? Danelle, what do you see in all that footage?
Yeah, so not to get too technical, when you go to the police academy, they go through these type of scenarios. You are trained in how to disarm someone who has a firearm and potentially may be violent. And what happens is that once you detect that there's a firearm on a suspect, the officer that detects that's supposed to say gun, gun, gun. Once you retrieve that gun, you're supposed to also make some type of positive affirmation that I've got the gun or gun retrieved. If that wasn't said, then in that scrum, a law enforcement officer may not have realized that that gun was retrieved. There's also the potential, and we don't know because we don't have the evidence, of an accidental discharge. You'll notice that.
This is what it looks like when you're a bootlicker. This is the guy. What was the reason for assaulting him and taking him to the ground in the first place? There was none. What was the reason they initiated law enforcement contact against him? They gave him no commands. They immediately escalated to physical violence and then executed him before he had done anything wrong. There's nothing about this that is procedurally close to right. They violated his rights the moment they laid the hands on him right away, you dumb fuck. Honest to God, look at his chapped ass lips. Holy fucking hell. Is that from sucking ice cock? Like, why is your lips so chapped? Jesus.
2 other federal agents had their guns out. There's a potential for what we call a sympathetic discharge, where their hand is on the trigger. Your hand's not supposed to be on the trigger unless you're ready to shoot. And they've accidentally discharged. Or the person that removed the gun from Alex Preddy accidentally discharged as he ran away. Once you hear a gunshot, a law enforcement officer may think that it's actually the suspect that shot, and that may have contributed to this. We don't know. Once again, this is all speculation because we lack the evidence. And the federal government.
We have the videos that are right there. We don't lack evidence. We don't lack evidence. We have direct video footage of it. We have testimony from people who are right there. We don't lack anything. What the fuck are you talking about? And guess what? ICE covered it up and refused to allow investigators to look it up. You fucking dummy.
It apparently is blocking that evidence from coming to light for the state and local authorities.
The amount of propaganda that's being done for ICE is insane. Watch the start. A federal agent rushes in and shoves a woman to the pavement for no visible reason. She isn't visibly threatening anyone or blocking anything. That gratuitous use of force is what lights the fuse. Alex Peretti steps in while filming on his phone. He's pepper sprayed, pulled into the street, and pinned down by multiple agents. Video reporting indicates an agent appears to remove Peretti's handgun from his waist, and within a second, another agent fires into him when he's still on the ground. A doctor's sworn statement cited in reporting describes multiple bullet wounds to Peretti's back. How is someone face down, blinded, and being physically restrained supposed to be a lethal threat? Federal agents are not above the Constitution. This demands an independent civil rights investigation and real accountability. I mean, this is basic shit. This is not even moderate. This is not even a moderate position. This is called human position. If you don't hold this position, you should be exterminated from the holding positions of power in our society. You should be removed from positions of power within our society. I think you have never been less safe. ICE and Border Patrol are now a criminal terrorist gang. That's right. I've the exact same behavior I would see at skinheads at POC road shows. One guy targets someone, always a smaller person, for a beating. Attempt to defend yourself, and 6 more guys come out of the woodwork swinging. Anyone else tries to de-escalate or defend the target, and they get it even worse. Yeah, because you have the only way skinheads fight, the only way fascists fight, is when they're outnumber the target. The best way to solve this is be a bigger group and be armed. The only mistake Alex Peretti made was being concealed carry. He should have open carried. He should have brought the AR-15. He should have been wearing plates. That's the only mistake he made. And being alone. He should have been with 7 other, 8 other, 10 other, 20 other people, all carrying AR-15s, all wearing plates. That's how you stand up to ICE. An armed rebellion is exactly what the Trump regime wants. No, they don't. No, they don't. No, they fucking don't. If there was an actual armed rebellion, the military's loyalty would become suspect. They would be under pressure because it would be so unpopular. The military does not want to fight a civil war. They would start falling out. They would be having all sorts of loyalty problems. Like you have misunderstood reality. The problem is, though, as well, a lot of this is just spontaneous resistance because they're occupying our city. It's just about people going about their day and standing up for their neighbors. Oh no, I completely understand. I'm not criticizing him, really. He was a martyr. He did nothing wrong. Absolutely nothing wrong. Even tactically, he did nothing wrong. They were just so evil and so unhinged that they murdered him in cold blood. If somebody just shoots you dead on the street while you're walking about your day, it's not that you made a mistake. You were just unlucky. The same people who wouldn't wear a mask to save your life will wear one to take it. They're wearing a mask because they're scared. You understand? They are wearing the mask because even though they have the power of the federal government behind them, they're scared of us. And they should be.
We're going to end with the tens of thousands of people.
Okay, so
let's take you to Minneapolis with MS Now.
Al Jazeera English published Minnesota ICE and the Makings of a U.S. Civil War, which it's certainly not a good sign. It's not a good sign.
Al Jazeera podcasts.
Today, could ICE violence in Minnesota escalate into civil war?
It's a perfect setup for a conflict between the National Guard and federal forces.
We talked to one expert who explains why the U.S. could be headed towards internal armed conflict. I'm Manuel Rapalo, and this is The Take. Before we continue with today's show, remember to leave us a comment telling us what you think about this episode. Are you watching carefully what's going on in Minneapolis? And are you concerned? If you're listening on a podcast app, leave us a review and give us a 5-star rating while you're there. It helps the show. All eyes have been on the U.S. state of Minnesota for weeks now, as ICE operations ramp up, sparking protests and widespread unrest across the city of Minneapolis. This news broke on Saturday.
I want to take you to the U.S. city of Minneapolis, where officials are saying they are aware of reports of another shooting involving federal law enforcement.
Alex Peretti was shot and killed. Vigils for him are happening across the metro.
Officials later said the man had died. Minneapolis city officials said the man is a 37-year-old white male, a resident of Minneapolis. They also say he is believed to be an American citizen and that he was a lawful gun owner with a permit to carry.
This marks the second killing by federal law enforcement in Minneapolis in recent weeks, following the January 7th fatal shooting of 37-year-old Renee Good by an ICE agent. I just landed in Minnesota to cover this breaking news story. We'll have more for you in the coming days, but on Friday, before this latest news broke, I spoke to someone who's been keeping a close eye on Minneapolis.
I'm Claire Finkelstein. I'm the Algernon Biddle Professor of Law and Professor of Philosophy at the University of Pennsylvania, and I run a national security center called the Center for Ethics and the Rule of Law at the University of Pennsylvania.
So, Claire, let me bring the audience to the United States of America, where we both are right now. I want to describe a scene to you. It starts with a law enforcement operation in the city of Philadelphia, where you are, and it ends with an armed conflict between state forces and federal forces led by the President of the United States. Of course, this hasn't happened yet, and is actually the result of a simulation conducted by the University of Pennsylvania's Center for Ethics and the Rule of Law, which you direct. Claire, for those who aren't familiar, can you lay out what happened during this simulation, during this exercise?
So at the Center for Ethics and the Rule of Law, we wanted to really try to anticipate what some of the threats to the rule of law might be during and after the 2024 presidential election. And so we took a bunch of former, mostly retired public servants, retired military, people who had been in government, some of them at quite high levels, And a few of them were actually currently in office in state and local government as a way of trying to prepare ourselves and trying to write a report that would help prepare the country for what might be coming, which is that there could be a clash between National Guard troops deployed very possibly by a governor or by the president using his federalization powers and federal troops. Now, you might wonder how it could happen that a president who has federalized National Guard troops could ever find that National Guard troops are conflicting with federal troops, regular military that a president has deployed. But in our scenario, that's exactly what happened. And the National Guard actually ended up loyal to the governor instead of the president.
Reminding our listeners that this is the result of a simulation, but we are having you on the show today because of how eerily similar the results of that exercise, that tabletop exercise as you describe it, are to what's going on in Minnesota.
Protests, tear gas, and more arrests. There's no sign of the anger subsiding in Minneapolis.
And Claire, I was just in Minnesota very recently. I arrived in Minneapolis on the day that Renee Good, that 37-year-old American citizen who was shot by an ICE agent, I arrived that same day to report for Al Jazeera English News. To you, what are those similarities that you're seeing there and in the tabletop exercise?
So what has happened in Minneapolis, and I think
Donald Trump focused on the pressing matters of our society. Melania the movie is a must-watch. Get your tickets today. Selling out fast. Is it like a pro-Melania movie? Is it a pro-Melania documentary? It's a doc she was paid $40 million for? At the largest immigration detention site in the country, officers beat up Samuel, a detained teenager who uses a pseudonym so badly he had to go to the hospital. His right front tooth broke, and he said, "One officer grabbed my testicles and firmly crushed them, forced his fingers deep in my ears." He added that weeks after the beating, damage to his left ear was so severe that he has now trouble hearing. Samuel is just one of dozens of accounts of abuse from the Immigration Detention Center at Fort Bliss Military Base in El Paso, Texas. These accounts reveal an unfolding humanitarian crisis at the military base, one which may spread across the country as the Trump administration expands attention dangerously, recklessly, with unprecedented speed. Human rights organizations, including the... Okay, well, I guess we just... Extreme and unlawful use of force is also prominent at Fort Bliss. Several detained individuals have described violent assaults by officers, including sexual abuse. Ignacio, Samuel, and others report officers crushing their testicles during beatings, attacked accused while people were already restrained, or after they refused coerced removal to Mexico. Abel, Benjamin, and Eduardo also reported being slammed, stomped on, or beat when they expressed fear of being sent to Mexico or when they simply requested their medication. These are not isolated incidents. They reflect a pattern of brutality that violates even ICE's minimal standards. Here's my personal opinion. If you see someone supporting ICE, document it and put as much information about that person as you can in that list. It's definitely something that we need to start doing.
This is based on very significant, wide, and consistent reporting, is that ICE agents are using force in many instances unlawfully. And the example that you just gave, the shooting of Renee Good, is a primary example that has really ignited people. I think there can be little doubt in people's minds at this point that it was an unlawful use of force on behalf of the ICE agent that shot her. So thinking about the fact that we have federal agents who are engaging in unlawful uses of force, what is a governor supposed to do? What is Governor Walz supposed to do? He cannot stand by and watch that idly play out without doing something to protect his citizens. He has put the National Guard on notice. They are on standby and they are ready to mobilize if need be. The president has meanwhile readied federal forces in Alaska and is threatening to send those into Minnesota. So it's a perfect setup for a conflict between the National Guard and federal forces, in this case, the 11th Airborne. And that was more or less the situation that we had imagined and predicted could occur in our tabletop exercise.
Like you said, Claire, it's kind of a perfect storm, these conditions that are being met that are so similar to the simulation that you're team ran. Let's speak a little bit about the rule of
Just so
law
we're
here
clear,
and how it
Al
applies
Jazeera's propaganda
to the
arm of Al Qaeda fascists. I mean, it's in Qatar, so there's definitely some problems with. There's definitely some problems with its editorial decisions on Middle East stuff, especially involving the Gulf states. But I don't think talking to a University of Pennsylvania professor about ICE and the Civil War is a sign where, I think we can say it's going to be pretty clear of that kind of bias.
Armed forces specifically.
You can refuse illegal orders.
You can refuse illegal orders.
You must refuse illegal orders.
Claire, these are statements by U.S. senators and members of the U.S. Congress who were either formerly military or formerly members of the intelligence community, speaking directly to current members of the military, to current intelligence officers via social media. How does that play into this scenario that we're discussing?
So let's be clear about what that video said and what it didn't say. What it said was black letter law, something that would be taught at any military academy, taught at any national security law class. It's what I teach my students, which is that members of the military have a duty not to carry out illegal orders. If you're sure that you have received an illegal order, not only can you disobey, but you must disobey and report that up the chain of command. Now, why is it relevant in this situation? It's relevant because if federal forces are called out, such as the 11th Airborne, to Minnesota, they will be engaged to back up ICE agents. And if ICE agents are behaving unlawfully, then that is an unlawful order. And as a member of the military, you cannot come in and use force to ensure that a federal agent has the ability to carry out an illegal act. So if ICE is engaging in shooting protesters in the legs, or ripping people out of their cars, or shooting women who have just dropped their kids off at daycare and are not threatening them through the windshield of their cars and killing them, federal forces cannot back up those agents without engaging in an illegal activity. And they cannot lawfully carry out any orders to back up ICE agents. And meanwhile, we will have the Minnesota National Guard, who will be there to protect police officers and citizens who will be potentially peacefully exercising their First Amendment rights to protest, for example. And if those are the facts on the ground, and they may or may not be when and if this should occur, then the Minnesota National Guard will be constitutionally and otherwise lawfully in the right, and they will have the right to carry out the governor's orders.
After the break, more with Claire Finkelstein.
I think one of the things I would say about professors is that you do not become a professor because of your public speaking ability. And I think this is kind of a problem that we have in general, is that if you are good at persuasion, you sell yourself to the highest bidder, right? So who are the people that are interested in buying successful persuaders? The answer is the people that have the most to gain from people being tricked. So scam artists and corporations that are doing evil shit. So I am somebody who can tank it, and I can tank somebody who's not very good on presentation style in order to get information, right? That's part of why I'm good at my job. However, I'm not going to make you do it. I'm not going to make you tank it because, intelligence 20, charisma 0 is unwatchable. Walter Rodney had the charisma, the professorship, and the integrity, and they killed it for it. Of course. ICE list. You need to get everybody in this. Public repository of ICE contacts, incidents, and systems helps people research how ICE operates, who supports it, and document its footprint using verified open information. That's interesting. That's an interesting organization. I want to read you something, chat, that pissed me off so fucking much. New Cat Abu Zagal. I can never say her name. New Cat video. She also said she's a DSA member. Oh, wow. She's moving left. Abu Zugaya. I can never say her name. Abu Ghazila. How do you say it? Abu Ghazila. Abu Ghazila? Abu Ghazila? I tried. Jesus Christ, Mike. All right, I shouldn't fuck around. All right, I want to read you something, no, in all seriousness, that actually disgusted me. One of the latecomers was a 46-year-old documentary filmmaker named Chad Knutson. Chad Knutson. Oh my God. Chad Knutson. On the morning after Good was killed, he was at home with his 2 hound dogs, watching a live feed from the Whipple building where ICE is based, a 5-minute drive from his house. A protester had laid a rose on a makeshift memorial to Good. As Knutson watched, an ICE agent took the rose, put it on its lapel, and then mockingly gave it to a female ICE agent. They both laughed. Knutson told me he had never been a protester. It seemed pointless or just a way for people to expiate their sense of guilt. But when he saw those ICE agents laughing, something broke inside him. I grab my keys, I grab a coat, and drive over, Knutson told me. I barely park my car and I'm running out screaming and crying. You stole a fucking flower from a dead woman. Like, are any of you human anymore? This is a profound question that you need to ask. And it's not rhetorical. It has an answer. And the answer is no. How would you act? 500,000 demons possessed the bodies of your fellow citizens, and then they began engaging in widespread murder and mayhem. On the one hand, you would look at the form of the demon. You'd see a possessed person, and you would mourn for them. You would say, hey, I'm sorry, but we've got to stop them. And if you could capture them and, you know, do an exorcism, you would. But the reality is, they've got to be stopped. They got to be stopped right now. It's ideological rabies. Exactly. Maybe 1% of them can come out the other side cured. All right, Graham Plattner has posted a video, chat. The Democratic Party leadership is failing us.
That as scary as the times feel, and as in moments hopeless as the future looks, we've actually been here before. Not in the exact same situation, because history doesn't repeat itself, but it does rhyme. And one of my favorite histories is Arthur Schlesinger's 3-part series, The Age of Roosevelt. So it's about the crises that the nation faced as it ran up to the Great Depression. But I want to talk specifically about the Democratic Party itself. In the mid-1920s, Homer Cummings of Connecticut said, "We are really up against what might be called a ruling class proposition within the Democratic Party. That its connections with the media and with immense amounts of power in business meant that it was not a party that was representing working people." Franklin Delano Roosevelt, FDR, also wrote about this, and this is one of my favorite quotes in this book. Roosevelt continued to emphasize in his incessant correspondence that the Democratic Party must make itself, by definite policy, the party of constructive progress before we can attract a larger following. Ever since 1920, he wrote in 1925, we have been doing nothing and waiting for the other fellow to put his foot in it. The other fellow had put his foot in it, Roosevelt continued, with the scandals and the tax plans that benefited the ultra-rich. But the Democrats could not even carry the Congress. The trouble lay in the fact that in the minds of the average voter, the Democratic Party today has no definite constructive aim. Now, when you hear that, when I hear that, that describes the party today.
Correct.
It describes a party that seems lost, that has no fundamental belief system. It doesn't know what it wants to do. And that is why, in the 1920s, it had no power. Much like today, the Democratic Party and the leadership in it have fundamentally forgotten how to build and wield power.
Well, it's because they don't, it's a jobs program for them. It's a way to get rich. It's a way to be famous. They don't believe in anything. They're not trying to construct anything. They're not trying to do anything. That's why they're constantly talking about polls. They're trying to construct the minimally viable campaign. That's the average Democrat. The average Democrat is trying to form the minimal viable campaign. They don't believe in anything. They're not aiming toward anything. They're not trying to accomplish anything. They're just trying to get into office. Why? So they're famous and rich. They can insider trade. They can take bribes. They can hire their family members. They can get them hired as fucking government consultants or lobbyists. It's an enrichment scheme. That's all they're about. And then what's the Democratic Party for? It's an incumbent protection racket. They all have power, so they all help each other. That's it. That's it. That's it. And until we in the grassroots grab the fucking torches and pitchforks and start scaring these motherfuckers, they're not going to change.
What came next after Roosevelt wrote those lines? Once the economy failed, once the pro-business legislation of the Republican Party sent this nation's economy into a downward spiral, it was his thought, his commitment to a constructive future, to constructive policies that resulted in the most transformational moment in American history, the New Deal, and propelled him to 4 as President of the United States. And it was in that time that we redefined what the purpose of American government was. It was not merely to let business run rampant, it was to provide good lives to all people under its jurisdiction. In the words of Frances Perkins, FDR's Secretary of Labor and the first woman cabinet member in American history. It is of that thinking that we got Social Security. It was of that thinking that brought us unemployment insurance. It was of that thinking that brought us massive investment in infrastructure. And it is no coincidence that today, 80 to 90 years later, our infrastructure is crumbling. It's crumbling because much of it was built by public program during the New Deal, by the CCC, by the WPA, programs that required massive amounts of public investment, but also massive amounts of political will. I say this because this is what we need to do next. We need to re-engage with that part of our history. And we need to understand that the fear and the uncertainty and the challenges that we have today, we have been here before as a nation. But the answer wasn't giving the rich more tax breaks. The answer wasn't allowing corporations to build more power and extract more wealth out of working people. And the answer wasn't staying divided, keeping working people at each other's throats. No, the answer was in building power. The answer was in realizing that only as a nation that works together, understanding it is in our communal activity, it is in our support of each other, it is in developing an economic system that's purpose is to elevate the lives of every American, not just the lucky few, that it is in that we find the answer to the challenges of today. Because when we look to the future, the challenges of climate change, the challenges of authoritarianism, the challenges of our food systems, the challenges of poverty, of healthcare, the answer to all of these is not giving up power to the rich and the powerful, but building power and re-engaging with the kind of politics that brought us the New Deal. I'm going to quote Franklin Roosevelt one more time. What this country needs is to get a little radical for a generation.
That is the best time for the Open Presence 100 bomb. And I just realized, chat, we are 3 hours into the stream and I've thus far forgotten to shill. If you enjoy this content, if you feel like what this country needs is to be a little bit radical for a generation, then please consider supporting it by subscribing at tier 1, tier 2, or tier 3 sub. I don't run ads on this stream. I don't run ads on the stream because I have an unabashed political view that Israel is committing genocide, that Palestine should be free from the river to the sea, that ICE is a criminal terrorist organization, that Tectone should be in prison, and he's going there. He's heading there, folks. The moment that we can rest and have a little bit of time to talk about some Twitch drama, Tectone, we're going to put that motherfucker in prison. I'm sorry that I'm not talking about, like, I'm sure many of you want me to quickly talk about it, and I'm sorry, it's just not important enough. Right now, we're talking about, like, fucking civil war and America becoming a fascist state, so I can't. I want to spike the football on Tectone and Asmongold, but it's not important right now. That being said, he's going to prison. Ham and fist, calm like a Tom, Open Presence, chat, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, NBs, and agenders. Those are some of our top stream supporters. They're here day in, day out supporting the stream. So I want to ask you, if you can afford it and you have been gifted a sub, can you pay for your own sub? Can you pay for your own sub? If you've been gifted like 10 subs You know you can afford $6 and you're in this stream for dozens of hours a week. Please pay for your own motherfucking sub. I used my Prime. Thank you so much for using your Prime. Zaffy Taffy, Gamer Goon. If you have Amazon Prime, you can attach that to your Twitch account. You get 1 free sub a month. That's your Twitch Prime sub. You get to take $5 from Jeff Bezos' pocket and stuff it into mine. You are literally doing praxis when you use your Prime on me. Give your Prime gaming sub to Mike from PA, famously a gamer. I've gamed on the stream. Can I first be removed from the shadow ban? No. You have to show trust. You have to give first. I don't do stuff. You do the shit first. You trust me. A little potato chip. I don't speak Chinese, unfortunately. Mike, is there a backup plan if Twitch ever blocks politics? I mean, I have other mainstream platforms. They're not going to block politics, chat. They're not blocking politics. If they made it through the Charlie Kirk shit, if they made it through the Israel Zionist shit, and me and Hassan are still standing tall, they're not banning this shit now. It was a close run thing for a while. I was worried for a while. They seem to be buckling, but their own laziness saved the day. I mean, the reason why I have such a large stream is because Twitch doesn't have an algorithm, really. I'm allowed to rise on my merit alone. Like, so I'm pretty happy with the status quo, to be quite honest with you. Because if there was an algorithm, they'd be shoving me down into whatever corner they could. I'm a broke boy, but I love you, Michael from Pennsylvania. I'm Jason from Boston, and your streams give me hope. I'm just paying bills and struggling. Well, there's a lot of people that are working paycheck to paycheck. They are people on a fixed income because they're on retirement or disability or unemployment, struggling to make ends meet. I don't want you to pay for a sub, but I want those people to be the ones that get the gifted sub. So if you are a person that can afford it, please consider supporting the stream. I mean, people used to pay for journalism. They used to subscribe to their local newspaper. Streaming and citizen journalism, that's how the left wins. We are going around the gatekeepers. We are presenting arguments that they cannot refute on the merits, so they have to stifle us. So you are providing the 21st century leftist organizations like streaming. That's how we fucking win. All right, everybody, stay safe. Thank you so much for all the support. We got a hype train going on, the top sub gifter, the top bit donor. Those are your hype train conductor badges next to your name if you get the top sub donor or the top bit donor. Right now it is Bandit with 200 bits and Open Presents with 100. Thank you so much for supporting the stream. I appreciate all of you. All right, let's keep going.
I believe that firmly because it was that kind of thinking that saved us in the 1930s. And it's that kind of thinking that will save us now. Thank you all very much for watching. If this sounds like your kind of politics, if this sounds like something you want to support, I urge you to get involved. Donate. Sign up to volunteer. If you're in Maine, sign up to knock doors. If you're not in Maine, sign up to phone bank or text bank for us. Or, and this is just as important, go find an organization in your community that is doing the work already. Go volunteer at a food bank. Join a union if you can. Find an organization focused on social justice or economic justice or mutual aid, because at the end of the day, it is only in that kind of organizing that we are going to find the capability to build the power necessary to fight for the future we all deserve.
I mean, I don't know, chat. Listen, I have a lot of criticisms of Graham Plattner, but you know what? Pretty based, man. Pretty based. He seems to get it. He really does seem to get it. Did you cover the draft Gaza peace board plan that dropped side obtained? No, I didn't. All right, let me thank the subscribers real quick. Let me see here. We've got ourselves XBC Noob, Flip Emo, Misanthropic Leftist, Don Quiddy, Space Cap, Cole the Troll. Thank you for all the support. I'm getting the sense that a lot of Americans, maybe in the margins, are becoming angry over the ICE stuff. Norbies that were supportive before are starting to flake away. Oh, yeah. A lot of people are pulling away from this ICE shit. They can see it's wrong. J Mint B, thank you for the 5 tier 1s. Thank you for all the primes, everybody. Felonious, Grimlock, Sussy Baka, Beck the Great, Socialism or Barbarism, Gamer Goon, Zaffy Taffy, Shred 87, GT Buzzsaw, Clear Games with the 20 bomb, Ham Fist with the 20 bomb, Tom Like a Tom with a 20 bomb, and of course, Open Presents with the 100 bomb. Thank you guys, gals, non-binary pals. You guys are the fucking best. All right, chat. I want to watch the Legal Eagle video. I've called him the liberal eagle. There's two people that I have been very, very, very harsh against because I consider their politics to be insufficient. Bry's son WC, that's voice critical and legal eagle. And I gotta be honest.
I know
I want to give them mea culpas because they have come out and they have spoken out. And I'm not the type of person, I don't like to hold people's old bad takes over their head. If you change your mind, if you start radicalizing, if you start giving out good takes, I don't like to hold over your bad takes over your head. Now, if you start saying bad takes again, well, then that's a different story. When you start saying the right thing, when you start coming out and speaking on the right side of issues, I want to welcome you in. I don't necessarily want to make you a leader of the movement, but I want to welcome you in.
Of us have seen the videos of what is basically the execution
Do you want to link
of
me that, Ice
Alex
Fury?
Preddy. I've seen it from
Thank you
more
so much,
angles,
Bryson.
and more
You're the best,
times
man.
than I care to repeat. I'm not going to give an in-depth frame-by-frame analysis. You don't need a lawyer to tell you what you can see with your own eyes, which is that it was an inexcusable state-sanctioned murder. There is no excuse. There is no justification, and it is the latest in what is probably a long line. This one happens to have been videotaped, thankfully, by many brave bystanders. As you can tell, I'm not in my studio. I was on a plane yesterday. Oh God, it's cold out here. It's 0 degrees, which is still 10 degrees warmer than it is in Minneapolis right now. But in some sense, I do this for a living. I analyze the videos that are out there and think about things from a legal perspective. And I saw the first video when it came out. It was pretty clear. With any video taken from across the street, there's some ambiguity. And but I think the second video came out. In the second video, you can hear that Alex Preddy's last words were, "Are you okay?" Which he said to the woman that was next to him, who had been pushed down by the ICE or CBP officer who was acting unhinged. Where Alex Preddy,
Thank you guys for the support.
just has his phone out and his left arm is free. I think those were his last words, and I think those were his last acts, was trying to help the woman that was pushed down by the man in the green sweatshirt, who I think eventually was the first agent who shot him. And like I said, I'm not going to go frame by frame, but to my eyes, the last thing that Alex Preddy did was to help others. And look, my legal analysis doesn't change when the victim is, a bank robber or a saint. Everyone deserves the same rights. And it doesn't justify less the actions of what happened, but it does heighten the loss of what happened and the people whose rights are being taken away and their lives are being taken away. So look, I'm going to try and gather some thoughts, which I'm only going to do because I think a lot of people are, thinking the same thing. Whether you're a lawyer or a layperson, I think we're all absolutely enraged, not only by, the loss of Alex Preddy, but Renee Good and everyone.
Can I say something that's problematic? Can I say something problematic? I want to say something problematic. Save your crocodile tears. It's our duty as privileged, wealthy, healthy, white men to go and stand with Alex. We need to take up his place. Save your tears. It's our job to step in the breach. There's a hole in the line. That's our job. I mourn him, but I mourn him by taking action. I am not surprised by ICE, and I'm not surprised guy. I hate that. I hate when people are saying that, but it's our job to get in the line. And I think what frustrates me the most is I've seen this coming. I've called it out, and I pointed out the Democratic Party collaborationism. That's what frustrates me, is where were you when Kamala Harris was trying to pass this policy? When Donald Trump's policy was being advocated by the Democratic Party, while they were increasing ICE funding, while they were normalizing mass deportation. This is stupid macho bullshit, Mike. That's why I said it was problematic. It's fine if you don't agree with me. We need to step into the breach.
everyone else who has been pushed aside and has been caught in this web of what is clearly illegal action from our federal government.
Crocodile tears is not what you call this. Crocodile tears implies they're not genuine. Okay, fair enough. I want to apologize. You're right. I should have said that. I should have said crocodile tears. I think I'm just so frustrated. Can I be honest with you? Can I be human with you guys for a second? I'm so frustrated with people crying. We need to fight. I need your rage, not your sorrow. That's what it is. I need your rage. I need your rage. I just can't stand it anymore. I can't stand of the liberals. I can't stand liberals crying all the time and never fighting back. So I'm sorry. That was wrong of me. That was wrong of me. This is something that I moved. I fucking teared up when I saw shit. That's totally human. It's totally human. And I was an asshole there. I apologize. But I want more. I want people fucking mad. Mike, you have been enraged or ready to fight for years. So we have, for the most part, we're past the point of tears. Libs are just waking up and not have had the chance to mourn yet. Fair. That's fair. I think that's the difference. Like I think I had my tears when I saw the Palestinian people getting annihilated. I was weeping when I saw the Palestinian people being annihilated by Joe Biden and Kamala Harris, and the children were being murdered, and people were like, I don't care about that. I've got my rights to think of. And that shit was, and so now, obviously I'm just as angry about ICE agents murdering white Americans on the streets as I am about Palestinian children being killed. I have the same level of anger. And I think that and what bothers me is that other people don't. That's what bothers me. Liberals only care when this violence comes home, not when 500,000 nameless dead Iraqis or Palestinians are killed and there is no account. I mean, I gotta be honest with you. I agree with that completely, but I also understand that it's not helpful. I understand that it's not helpful to say that. Okay? I'll say it with you guys, but it's also bad optically and it's bad persuasion. It really is. And I don't want to take it down on Liberal Eagle. Okay? Like, I don't want to take it out on him. It's not fair. I have a lot of rage in me right now. I gotta be honest. I am absolutely boiling over with rage. And rage is an emotion that you have to keep under control because it can make you excessively aggressive. And you don't want to displace. And I'm doing some displacing here. I have been actually boiling with rage since October 7th. I'll be completely fucking honest with you that I have been so fucking full of rage since October 7th that I'm like actually unhinged. And I am masking. I'm trying to hold back. I'm self-censoring, and I'm trying to figure out something effective to do. Because the last thing I want to do is some sort of quixotic charge and fail. I want our efforts to win, not just be a moral, cleansing of myself. I don't want to just wash my hands of my fucking complicity in this society. So I'm taking it out on Liberal Eagle, and that's bad optics. And you guys are right to call me out for that. That's why I told you it's problematic. Problematic. I guess I'm just, you know what my mentality is? I have the mentality of a drill sergeant. That's where my mind is at now. I have the mentality of a drill sergeant. I want you to pull yourself up, dust yourself off, and fight fucking back. This is not a safe place. This is not a place for self-care. Like, and I'm sorry about that. I know there's not enough of those places anymore. But god damn, dude. I think this video covers what you're trying to say.
Welcome, friends. I'm Black Flag Civilian, and here we are again. It's January 25th, 2026, and yesterday, ICE murdered another civilian in Minnesota. Not Renee Good, another Minneapolis resident. His name was Alex Preddy, a 37-year-old RN who worked at the Minneapolis VA's intensive care unit. His life was spent providing life-saving care to American veterans. Alex is a hero who spent his last moments protecting a woman from the very federal agents who would ultimately murder him. In times like these, when the state turns its violence inward against its own people, when you see the utter dehumanization of a vulnerable population and the reckless wanton brutality the government carries out against them and anyone who defends them, it's easy to fall into despair, to feel helpless, When you see government agents armed to the teeth and demanding papers from individuals based purely on skin tone and accent. When you see feds detaining children and using them as bait to capture and disappear family members. When you see a video of masked thugs gunning down a U.S. resident on the streets of an American city and then walking away with no consequences. When you see an evil so massive, so organized, and so well funded, it's natural to think to yourself, I'm just one person. How the hell can I fight this? And the truth is, as a regular working class person in the United States, when you're by yourself, isolated and alone, it's true, you cannot. That's why our entire society at every level is structured by the rich and powerful to keep us at best isolated from one another, or at worst fighting one another over trivial bullshit.
He's completely right. Do you see ICE is rumored to be heading to Philly next? Open presence. Thanks for the 100 subs. I'm silent because Pennsylvania is a land of contrasts. Pennsylvania is a state where you could go and buy yourself a fucking Switch on an AR-15 with a drum mag and a suppressor, and that same afternoon walk home with it. But it's also full of a shit ton of socialists. And there's a lot of forest land and mountains.
But it doesn't have to be that way. There is a way to fight this. There is a way to stop federal agents from carrying out their ethnic cleansing operation against immigrants and asylum seekers in
Where is this guy at?
the U.S. And it isn't coming from politicians. It isn't coming from the rich. It isn't coming from the police or the military or the courts. The simple truth is this: we have to save ourselves. If me saying that made your stomach turn, I get it. When you're staring down an enemy so powerful, so institutionally protected, so willing to lie to achieve their despicable goals, this responsibility can feel unnerving. But there's another simple truth to remember. There are more of us than there are of them. Listen to me. There are so many more of us than there can ever be of them. We outnumber them dramatically. And the only weapon we have to stop this is solidarity. Intense, prevailing solidarity between all regular, everyday working people who
completely based and correct. This guy hasn't said one thing I disagree with, not one.
Reside in our nation. This is our superpower. And I want to be crystal clear here. Solidarity is not just a slogan. Solidarity means action. It means putting your own safety on the line to protect innocent people from harm.
Open presence, thank
Minneapolis is a beautiful, shining example for what this looks like in action. Never in my life have I seen this level of solidarity that I'm seeing right now. Literally tens of thousands of people using a variety of tactics to seriously, materially hinder the operations of the jackbooted thugs snatching innocent people off their streets. I can't stress enough that this is the blueprint for resistance to tyranny. The alert whistles work. The car alarms work. The noise demonstrations at their hotels work. The rapid response systems work. Warning people that ICE is in town genuinely keeps people out of detention. I've literally seen with my own two eyes a person saved from ICE thugs because rapid responders were present, alerting everyone in the area that ICE is nearby. No one tactic can end the federal government's ethnic cleansing campaign in isolation, but all the tactics, relentlessly applied, make the kidnappers' lives a living. It makes it incredibly difficult for them to steal our neighbors. If it's just the same few dozen activists from your local scene, this doesn't work. If it's entirely operated and contained by the same handful of nonprofits, this doesn't work. In order to actually defend our neighbors from state terror, we need to respond with scale. You need the young people, of course, but you also need the unks and the aunties and the old heads and the church ladies. It has to be bottom up. It has to be decentralized, and it has to be big. This can.
Okay, I get it. Obviously, this guy's an anarchist with Black Flag in the name. I get it. I understand it. Obviously, centralized organizations are something that can be vulnerable. But here's where I disagree. We actually need to have prominent leaders, and we need to have executive ability. But I do agree that it needs to come from the masses.
Not be a subculture. This requires mass participation.
The thing about mass participation is that it's energy based. It's energy based. And it's very difficult to keep up energy unless you have institutional accountability. Let's just be honest. You know, you show up to a place if other people are holding you accountable and you have directives you need to accomplish. I'm sorry, it's just the facts of my experience in life. Maybe all of you are self-starters and you don't need nobody else ever, holding you accountable to anything. But for me, being organized, even in a small group, increases my productivity, increases my ability.
Think about it this way. If it's 5 ICE thugs facing down 5 responders, then the responders are in serious danger. If it's 5 ICE thugs facing down 50 responders, the responders are meaningfully safer and ICE operations are slowed down.
I mean, yeah, he's right.
If it's 5 ICE thugs versus 500 responders, then the ICE thugs turn tail and get the fuck out of the neighborhood.
Correct.
They are cowards.
Correct.
The more people who step up, the more people defending their neighborhoods from ICE and Border Patrol kidnappers, the safer everybody is. Remember, our numbers and our solidarity are our superpower.
True.
But there's something else I have to acknowledge. There is no safe way to resist a tyrannical regime. As tragic as it is, anything you do to protect your neighbors from ICE kidnappings will put you at some risk. Anyone telling you different is lying. The feds have shown that they will break their own laws, attack and maim and murder you, and then lie about it afterwards. They will overreact. They will engage in disproportionate violence. We will take casualties. This is inevitable. This very unhinged brutality against regular working people will be the downfall of ICE and Border Patrol's campaign of terror. Every time they overreact, every time they brutalize a community member, with every pepper ball, tear gas canister, and bullet, they recruit new rapid responders, new protectors, new helpers. For every Renee Good and Alex Preddy that ICE murders, they recruit countless thousands into the resistance. Through their depravity, they sow the seeds of their own destruction. But their downfall is not predestined. It's up to us. It requires us to be braver than we've ever been. It requires all of us to stand the fuck up and fight for our neighbors, even if it puts us at significant personal risk. And if you can't be a rapid responder, that's okay. You don't have to face down murderer state agents if you aren't equipped for that. But there are always places where you can plug in and help. In modern conflicts, there's at least 4 support people behind every frontliner. The people on the ground can't keep doing what they're doing without dispatchers, mutual aiders, bail funds, and a dozen other systems of care and support. Every one of those projects needs volunteers. They need funds. They need you. I'm talking directly to you now.
The problem with things being too decentralized is that they become co-optable. Because unfortunately, regular people do not have the ability to discern who is an agent provocateur, who is a spy, who is a cop. And we also need to have coordination. So obviously the energy has to come to the masses and the leadership needs to be accountable to the masses. But you need leadership and yes, hierarchy to protect the organization from infiltration, co-option, etc. Because if you don't have any if you don't have any leaders at all, if you don't have any praxis at all, how do you know what to do? How do you know what best practices are? There has to be some, like, I'm sorry, like, I get it. I agree with this we have to have the masses and you need to get out there. And he's right. Honestly, he's right. I think one of the big problems that we have is a lot of people think they're going to be the leader. But I don't need you, like, I want you to show up, but I don't want you to be showing up going, we're not having any leaders. I need you to be smarter than that, but I need you to show up. Liberals to leftists right now. Okay, you really want me to watch this, so I will, because I love you.
Your muscles have never used.
Your muscles have atrophied. We're rebuilding them. And why do my eyes hurt? I've never used them before. Honestly, that's all of us. That's every single one of us. You need to get to the gym. You need to get your steps in. And you need to train hard. You need to buy a gun. You need to know how to operate it. You need to join an organization. All that stuff, you have to turn yourself into the revolutionary that you always imagined yourself to be. What I want to know is, who wants to be a drone pilot?
This video is going to end in just a minute. And when it does, you need to do some research. Find the rapid response and mutual aid groups in your region and join them. If they don't exist yet, then you start one. You aren't crazy. This is a crossroads. Either enough of us wake up and join the fight to keep families and communities whole, or we descend into barbarism. It all hinges on your actions right now. Do not stand on the sidelines. Fight like hell for Renee, for Alex, and for all other victims of ICE thugs. Plug, then bring a friend, and plug them in too. Until next time, take care of each other.
Terrence Lee Randolph, March 30th, 1947, December 10th, 2024. Today we remember that freedom is not free. We have to work at it, nurture it, protect it, and even sacrifice for it. May we never forget and always remember our brothers and sisters who have served so that we may enjoy the gift of freedom. So in this moment, we remember and give thanks for their dedication and selfless service to our nation in the cause of our freedom. In this solemn hour, we render them our honor and our gratitude.
What's your thoughts on Socialist Rifle Organization? I feel like with any organization, I'll have my ideological disagreements. The more important thing is, what is it going to take for you to get skills? Alex was my dad's nurse at the VA ICU when he was dying. Oh my God, this is so amazing. Alex was my dad's nurse at the VA ICU when he was dying from glioblastoma. And he was the kindest person. This was a few years ago, and I still remember his kindness. Regardless, no one deserves to die, but he was a kind soul. What the fuck? I believe you. I choose to believe you. White House is live.
For the weekend, and many Americans are still being impacted by that. So we absolutely do not want to see that funding lapse, and we want the Senate to move forward with passing the bipartisan appropriation that was negotiated on a bipartisan.
Secondly, there's another round of Russia-Ukraine talks this weekend, Sunday. If you can walk us through with the president, how he will be involved in that, if at all. We'll be talking to President Putin, President Zelensky ahead of those meetings.
I'm not tracking any scheduled calls. However, the president is deeply involved, and of course he's being apprised by his advisors, namely Jared Kushner and Special Envoy Witkoff, on these talks. They had a multilateral meeting this past weekend, which didn't get a ton of coverage, but that was historic in nature, where the president's team has really brought two sides of this to the table together to move the ball closer. The president is not giving up on the peace process. He obviously just met with President Zelensky when we were in Davos, Switzerland, but I'm not tracking any calls scheduled for this week. On one more foreign policy point, I will point out, as you all saw, the last remaining body of the Israeli hostages in Gaza has been returned. This is a huge foreign policy for the President of the United States, for the State of Israel, and frankly for the whole world. The President made the impossible possible, and so it's great news for the President, for the United States, for our allies, and also for peace in the Middle East. And I understand that more than 20 new additional countries have also signed up to join the newly established board with respect to the rebuilding of Gaza, which is another historic for this president. So thank you all very much, and we'll see you in Iowa tomorrow.
I'm sorry, Chad, but these are some of the most disgusting parasites in the history of the United States or in the world, to be honest. They completely disgust me. All right, let's get back to the Legal Eagle video.
Like I said, it doesn't change the legal analysis, but it does say something that Alex Preddy and Renee Good before him seem to be the best of us. And there's a reason why they were gunned down. It's because they put themselves out there. And by God, that's commendable. And we need to continue to stand up because they did too. And look, you don't need to be a lawyer to know that their shootings were not justified. But I think we need to take a step back too to recognize that, ICE and CBP shouldn't have been there in the first place. They have no right and no duty to do crowd control, to be on the front lines using weapons against protesters. These people should not be armed. We've sort of grown inured to it, but they are not enforcing criminal law. Even when they are enforcing immigration laws, which they are not right now, it is state-sponsored protest control of people exercising their First Amendment rights. At best, they are enforcing regulatory and civil laws. And there's no reason they should have firearms in the first place. I don't even think should have less lethals like pepper balls, and they shouldn't be using tear gas and pepper spray and bear spray on protesters. That's insane. It would be as if we gave every postal worker and every person who delivers the mail, an AR-15. They don't need it to complete their duties, and it's insane that they have been armed and are wearing flak jackets and are obviously wearing masks for no other reason than to obscure their identity and prevent accountability. Obviously, the shootings are unjustified, but the entire situation that recently Alex Preddy unfortunately found himself in, and the woman next to him, they should not have been pushed aside by these putative federal officers for exercising their First Amendment rights. They should not have been restrained. They should not have been pepper sprayed while they were restrained. And of course, they should not have been shot and murdered while they were prone and restrained. None of that. The entire situation should not have happened. 3,000 ICE and CBP officers should not have been deployed to Minneapolis in the first place. I will echo what some legal commentators have said. This is basically stochastic terrorism. If you send 3,000 untrained psychopaths with guns into a place where people are angry, where they are not effectuating the law, you don't know who's going to die, but you know that people are going to die. And I think that President Trump and I think that Stephen Miller have blood on their hands because this is what they wanted. It's honestly incredible that the people of Minneapolis and Minnesota have shown as much restraint as they have, and that they have not taken the bait and they have not responded to violence with violence. And that's incredible. And it deserves commendation, not the least of which because they're not going to be the last. It's going to come to other cities.
All right, we have a Nazis. You guys are acting like you don't make mistake. Let ICE do its job. Here's ICE's job. Die. We're gonna help ICE melt. Don't you worry.
Dominantly blue and majority Democratic cities, because what ICE and CBP are doing is a terror campaign. It is a pretext that they are effectuating anything related to immigration at this point. And also, I will point out that there are a lot of people doing a lot of good. There are a lot of lawyers working overtime. Right after this happened, lawyers who had already received a temporary restraining order saying that ICE could not employ unconstitutional methods to restrain and punish all of the protesters, filed a emergency motion with the Court of Appeals to lift an administrative stay that was...
Okay, see, the thing about this, all right, this is where liberal ego is kicking in again. The court system only works if they're willing to direct sheriffs or marshals to arrest ICE agents who are violating their orders. If sheriffs or marshals are not actually going and arresting them, then it doesn't fucking matter. If you can have all the orders you want, but if you're not willing to enforce those orders with sheriffs or with marshals, then it doesn't fucking matter.
Put in place, which is a thing that often happens, and it's insane that they would need a TRO in the first place to restrain these people en masse from conducting unconstitutional raids and unconstitutional methods. But the declarations from people who were on the scene and saw Alex Preddy shot with their own eyes, it's crazy that lawyers would respond within a few hours and get that in front of a judge. It's also, there was some parallel litigation from the Minnesota Bureau in charge of the investigation that was stymied by ICE, which is another thing for another day. Within a few hours, they had a motion in front of a judge seeking a temporary restraining order to prevent ICE from destroying evidence because they already mucked up the crime scene. The declarations and affidavits from people in support of that are also incredible. And another incredible thing that is within 2 hours, a Trump-appointed judge granted the TRO, and these are not perfect mechanisms. It's something that in the past has helped to prevent ICE from destroying evidence, which I think they did in the case of Jonathan Ross when they took all of the stuff out of his house and put it God knows where. It probably goes without saying, but it's unfortunate and it's crazy that we cannot trust federal officers in the first place, but we also cannot trust them to investigate. There are also things that Congress can and should do immediately. Obviously, they should not fund in the future, but that's the table stakes. We need to have serious curtailment of the immunity that exists. Federal officers do not have absolute immunity, but they do have strong immunity, and it is incredibly difficult to sue the federal government when you have had your constitutional rights deprived. Obviously, there's qualified immunity on a state level when state actors do that. It would be unbelievably easy for Congress to amend the current laws to provide a right of action for people to be able to sue, to remove qualified immunity unnecessarily, and to prevent all of this stuff in the future, because the current framework for immunity for people who commit heinous crimes like these, I think it's untenable and it's disgusting. And then, of course, the people who are responsible for this at the very top need to be impeached. This is an impeachable offense. Like I said, I truly believe that this is, or some version of this is exactly what Donald Trump and Stephen Miller wanted. And in some sense, they have gotten what they wanted. And now it's time for them to be removed from office, because they are absolutely unfit from top to bottom. It needs to be removed root and stem. And if you thought it couldn't get any more craven than it is, within hours of Alex Preddy's shooting, Pam Bondi sent a letter to Governor Tim Walz saying that if they would turn over voter information, then they would withdraw ICE from Minneapolis. So if you want a confession that this was never about immigration, and that on some level this is about winning the next election, and that if you thought that these people couldn't get any more craven.
By the way, it's not about winning the election, it's about rigging the election. And the other thing is, and I'm going to say it, if you're not willing to fight a civil war over stolen election immediately, like when they try to steal the election, if we're not willing to fight a civil war, they'll get away with it. Like we need to say, if the elections are not fair, we will fight a civil war. Now, that's as simple as that.
They can, and they will, and they did. I'm flabbergasted from everything that's happened. The thing that I keep coming back to is how incredible the people who are resisting are doing in the face of such adversity, and how they are rising to the occasion. I believe Attorney General Bondi said that this country was formed for respect for law enforcement. I actually think that could not be further from the truth. This country was formed by resisting and rebelling against tyranny, and that tradition is what I think people point to when they say that we engage in American activity, and we should continue to do so. I know people want to do something, and our options are limited. One thing that you can do that was recommended to me by commentator Will Stansel, who is on the ground in Minneapolis, is to donate to the Lawyers Guild of Minnesota, the ACLU of Minnesota, or Minarca of Minnesota. They are on the ground providing legal relief to the people who have been caught up in this terrible web, and are helping out the people who have been victimized by this reign of terror. So I'll leave some links in the description for that. Yesterday was a really, really bad day, but there are some glimmers of hope, and it shows that they'll come for the best of us, but that we can fight back.
And I think that's a really, I haven't seen that video before, and I think it ended really strong. And I totally feel the reason why he's crying. Why is he crying? The reason why he's crying is because he's mourning his own liberalism. This is how radicalization happens. This is how radicalization really happens. You have to understand how people form beliefs. It's not from just arguments and facts. It doesn't matter how logical you are, how educated you are. You have a worldview, and it is socially reinforced. If you're a practicing lawyer, you are a liberal. Because you are valuing through your daily day-to-day life the status quo system. You're a functionary within that system, and you have to fundamentally believe somewhere in there the work you're doing, unless you're completely nihilistic, has a chance achieving justice. But I don't know if you've caught it, chat. The legal system is completely non-functional in defending our constitutional rights right now. Non-functional. Doesn't exist. ICE agents are violating court order after court order, and it's not even a story. Watch the LSV cube draft. Hell yeah. This is very much LSV core, where I'm looking at the thumbnail. He's got Spell Pierce, Counterspell, and Psychic Frog. Now, I don't know if you've ever played Magic the Gathering, chat, but I would consider those three cards to be some of the most annoying piece of shit cards to ever exist. I just want to take a moment to say these are three of the cards that I hate more than anything. Psychic Frog may be one of the most overpowered creatures to ever exist. It's fucking stupid. Spell Pierce is insanely OP. And Counterspell, I mean, come on. I think if there's any card that made more people quit the game, it is 2-mana Counterspell. What color do you play, Mike? I am an Esper fan. If you're asking me the color combo that is closest to my heart, I occasionally will dabble with Boros as well. And the other thing I say is that aggro is very skillful, and anybody who doesn't think so is bad at the game. That is my most unironic Magic opinion. Bant Gang, anybody who chooses green over glorious red or black, sus. I mean, that's true for everything, but were you around for VV combo? That shit was not okay. No, that's just a garbage overpowered deck. Who cares? I like my tempo decks to barely win. I don't like, I'll be honest with you, chat. I'm not a combo enjoyer. I don't like decks where you play solitaire. I don't understand why people like that. I guess I get it from the point of view of like, you're setting up a machine and then you get to watch it run, and that could be fun, I guess. I'm not a combo enjoyer. That's the one. I'd rather play control than combo, for sure. Mike would evaporate if he played Yu-Gi-Oh! That's why I don't like the game. Some of the most fun decks are green and black and green and red. Oh, of course. Green and red is great. Who doesn't like green and red? Somebody asked. If I was being totally honest, I like Orzhov strategies the most. My favorite deck of all time was a green, black, and white deck. I think it was called Aristocrats. That was the most fun. That was like my favorite deck. I also really, really liked Original Delver. But then it became too OP when it became, you know, it became so OP at the time. And it kind of ruined the game a little bit. Mike, how are you so based? I'm just right about everything, man. What would you describe the current admin? Unironically, Orzhov. Actually, unironically, yeah, not Orzhov. Orzhov is actually too competent for them. I would say, I would say black-red. I would say black-red. They're not mono black. Mono black is too competent. They're very Rakdos. Like mono black is like, that's the color of liches and shit. You know, like they're not black. They're Rakdos. They're like falling down and you know, spiking themselves in the head. What do I think about mono blue players? I feel like not showering for a week before the match is not a good strategy. That's generally my feeling towards mono blue players. All colors are valid. I like blue, but I also have a personality, so I like other colors as well. All right, let's keep going. What was I talking about? I'm talking about random bullshit instead of actual politics and pissing everyone off. Oh, I once spent hours upon hours digging through old tournament postings to try to find out info about JD Vance when I found out he used to play MTG. I think I came pretty close, but I couldn't verify. I play Mill Control. What does that say about me? I think variants of Mill are really about, as I said, constructing your own little clock tower, right? And frustrating the other party, like making what they're doing irrelevant. And the real question is, do I get to assemble my little machine before they kill me? It's like playing Legos while somebody is, you know, shooting at you. It's like, if I assemble this Lego set before you shoot me, I win. Is this what Philly's gonna do to ICE? I want to explain to you, Philadelphia, chat.
Finally tonight, in the city where the American experiment began, a Canadian experiment has come to an end.
Hello, I am Hitchbot, a hitchhiking robot from Port Credit, Ontario.
The idea was to see how people would interact with a talking, solar-powered robot as it hitched across America on its own, tracked by a GPS. The brainchild of Canadian researchers, it had successfully thumbed rides across Canada, Germany, and the Netherlands. Then, on July 17th, Hitchbot set out from Boston bound for San Francisco with a bucket list of sights to see.
I need your help crossing all of the items off my list.
As chronicled on social media, it caught a Red Sox game and visited Times Square through the kindness of strangers who became friends. But late last week, Hitchbot hitched its last ride.
Hitchbot, do you need a seatbelt?
Yes.
On Saturday, the robot was found in Philadelphia, the city of brotherly love, resting in pieces. Late today, video surfaced of the attack, but the robot's creators are not out for revenge.
He's wearing an Eagles jersey.
I'm sure it could have happened anywhere. We don't really think it has anything to do with Philadelphia.
And in a final tweet, Hitchbot said, "My love for humans will never fade." A thumbs up for people from the hitchhiking robot. Rage Against the Machine.
And when white supremacists come to Philly.
It is now 9:02 and new this morning. Only Action News was there as protesters associated with the white supremacist group Patriot Front marched through the heart of Philadelphia. Counter-protesters confronted that particular group. Police did respond to the scene that you see right here. That march coming ahead of today's visit by First Lady Jill Biden, and her security is heightened for the 4th of July. Action News reporter Becca Hendrickson is live on Independence Mall with an update on the commotion in the city of Philadelphia. Becca, what are you learning about this?
Greg, first of all, the First Lady is due to be here on Independence Mall within the next few hours for a celebration of freedom ceremony. As you said, with her presence comes heightened security. Homeland Security had issued a warning this week about the threat of violent extremists exploiting the return of large gatherings. Now, while they remained nonviolent last night, a group of white supremacists were here in Philadelphia. They marched through the city on the eve of the First Lady's visit. Police say none of the protesters were from Philadelphia. Patriot Front is based in Texas, and they traveled into the city. Action News was the only crew on scene as the group traveled down the Ben Franklin Parkway, across Market, Chestnut, and Walnut Streets before marching to Penn's Landing. Hundreds of mass protesters from Patriot Front chanted while carrying American flags and shields. At Penn's Landing, several onlookers began yelling at the protesters and banging on trucks as the group loaded into the vehicles and drove off. Police say some of those angry onlookers actually scared off the white supremacists.
They started engaging with citizens of Philadelphia who were none too happy about some of the things they were saying. Apparently these males felt threatened, and at one point somebody in their crowd threw a type of what we believe is a smoke bomb to cover their retreat, and they literally ran away from the people of Philadelphia.
Police later questioned the entire group of protesters after pulling their trucks over for safety reasons along Delaware Avenue. Now, police say no property was destroyed during this commotion last night. We are hoping to learn more about why these white supremacists were in Philadelphia. But again, this was on the eve of the First Lady's visit to the city. Live on Independence Mall, Becca Hendrickson, Channel 6 Action News. Alicia?
And as I said before, George Soros DA Larry Krasner has promised to prosecute ICE.
If any law enforcement agent, any ICE agent, is going to come to Philly to commit crimes, then you can get the F out of here. Because if you do that here, I will charge you with those crimes. You will be arrested. You will stand trial. You will be convicted, whether it's in state or federal court. It's my office prosecuting it. That's how the law works. And you will do your time, because Donald Trump cannot pardon you for a state court conviction. Do you hear me, ICE agents? Do you hear me, National Guard? Do you hear me, military? You're going to jail if you commit crimes in the city of Philadelphia. You will be accountable. The law applies to all of you. And I know that there are honest, decent, moral law enforcement officers out there by the bushel, including in ICE. This is not for you.
I personally don't agree with this strategy. Fuck ICE. But this is a question of, one of the problems that we're facing is, will these law enforcement agencies mutiny?
This is for any one of your colleagues who thinks they are above the law. If any law enforcement agent, any...
Pretty base. So, I don't know, man. I think Minnesota's nice. Philadelphia, I know the homicide rate has gone down. The homicide rate has gone down in Philadelphia. But it hasn't gone down that. I mean, it's not that low. Not that low. The lowest it's been in 50 years, but it's still Philadelphia low. It's not low, it's Philadelphia low, okay?
What are the Democrats' tools besides saying how they feel very strongly? The power of the purse, which again, it's not a big power since they're in the minority in both chambers. But just to kind of rewind the clock a little bit, remember the last time there was a shutdown, the reason it got fixed is because there were a group of Democrats in the U.S. Senate who decided to vote with Republicans to reopen the government. One independent who caucuses with the Democrats is Angus King. Here's what he said about the current moment where we are now.
I hate shutdowns. I'm one of the people that helped negotiate the solution to the end of the last shutdown, but I can't vote for a bill that includes ICE funding under these circumstances. Take up DHS by itself. Let's have an honest negotiation, put some guardrails on what's going on, some accountability, and that would solve this problem. We don't have to have a shutdown.
Tom Suozzi, who's a Democrat from New York, is in a swingy district there, who also voted to reopen the government last time, said that he made a mistake last time.
There is, and Monty knows this better than anyone, as do you, Dana, there is always a group, particularly in the Senate, on both sides, that hate shutdowns and will inevitably be the deal makers, even if we get into a shutdown, that deliver an outcome eventually, at some point when the political kind of temperature starts to lower enough for them to be able to move. You're not going to see that. Nobody I've talked to over the course of the weekend sees any of those Democrats, at least, or the bulk of them, enough to give John Thune 60 votes in the package that was expected to pass fairly easily this week of 6 appropriations bills, including the DHS bill, to move anytime soon, which means almost certainly there will be a shutdown or a partial government shutdown related to those 6 bills unless Republicans are willing to agree to strip out the DHS bill. And I haven't talked to anybody on the Republican side who sees any possibility of that procedural mechanism occurring, which means I literally during the break asked Manu, I was like, what's the off-ramp here? We have no idea.
I mean, the problem is that there's a process problem and a policy problem and a timing problem. They have a Friday deadline here in order for
this
Friday, and that's just not the DHS funding. It has all these other major agencies, the Defense Department, Labor Department, Health and Human
Democratic
Services.
priorities, major ones.
Much of the federal government would be funded by this bill. So this would be a significant crisis if this is not resolved. And so if they don't reach an agreement on the policy, which just means the ICE and the ICE demands that Democrats are seeking here, then they have to reach an agreement on the process, because any one senator can vote to essentially delay things past the Friday deadline. That's going to be very hard to get all 100 senators to agree to essentially expedite things or change things on the fly. Meantime, the House is out of town. Remember, they are on recess right now, too. So this all is pointing to a very, very damaging shutdown. The change in the Democratic approach in this has been remarkable, because last week it seemed like they were going to let this go. Now they are dug in and they're ready to fight.
Yeah, and I mentioned Tom Suozzi.
Now, the reason why they're ready to fight isn't because they suddenly figured it out or gained the conscience. It's because you went out on the streets and are forcing the issue.
I'm just looking at it again. He voted last week on this current bill, and there were a lot of Democrats who were not happy with him that did it. I just want to, before we go to break, switch gears a little bit. And I want to play something that Tim Walz said yesterday.
We have got children in Minnesota hiding in their houses, afraid to go outside. Many of us grew up reading that story of Anne Frank. Somebody's going to write that children's story about me. And there's one person who can end this now.
Anne Frank, Priscilla?
Before the shooting that happened on Saturday, remember what news cycle we were in. We were talking about a 5-year-old and his father who were taken to an immigrant detention facility. And the conversation at the time publicly was about children being swept up in enforcement operations that weren't targeting them, but they were swept up in, and them not having any control over the situation. So I think part of that, too, is tugging at the heartstrings, tugging on history, and saying that essentially, Walz, as in most of his remarks, has said, what side are you going to be on when you're retelling?
It's a big tug towards history there. But just real quick, your sources on this whole question about funding and a shutdown.
Yeah, well, on the White House side, I don't see how they give them just out. That would be sort of a big capitulation for many of the Trump and Republican
Dana
side.
Fash
But
is
I
a
do think
Zionist.
the politics on this in general are moving.
And not like a small Zionist, like one of America's most prominent Zionists. She's like she was involved in a lot of Zionist like advocacy boards while an anchor on CNN until she was forced to resign. She's legitimately one of the most Nazi people to ever be on the news.
That's right. Like up until the past couple of weeks, I think there was a full throttle effort behind the Stephen Miller approach to deportations, to DHS, to funding, everything, right? And I think as some of this has gone further and further and further, there are people in the White House increasingly queasy, saying it's going to hurt us in the midterms. The polling's not there with us. We don't like what we're seeing in the videos. We don't think we've gone too far now, right? And so what's really playing out inside the White House, I think in the last 48 hours in particular, are lots of conversations. What are we doing here, right? Do we keep doing this just as we've been doing it, or do we scale back some of this and some of these operations, some of these DHS efforts? And I think you're going to see that play out over the course of this week with the president involved as well, obviously.
Joining me now is Congresswoman Angie Craig, who is running for Minnesota. Congresswoman, thank you so much for joining me this morning. Let's talk about the aftermath now, which is this new government shutdown.
Terrible things are happening outside. Poor, helpless people are being dragged out of their homes. Families are torn apart. Men, women, and children separated. Children come home from school to find their parents have disappeared. Diary of Anne Frank, January 13th, 1943.
The Democratic leaders say that they will block this funding bill if it does have money for ICE, but a shutdown could impact many major agencies, from housing to defense to transportation. So in your view, should Democrats shut the government down over ICE?
Democrats keep acting like these are normal times in our country. That's my response to you. I voted against the DHS funding bill on the House floor last week, and I voted against the 3 other bills that were put before me. The levers we have in the minority are few, but this is one of them. And so I encourage my Senate Democratic friends to do whatever it takes to get ICE out of Minnesota. This is a moment in time that history is going to judge every single one of us, and including my Republican colleagues who are complicit in their silence at this moment.
So that would mean you'd be okay if the Democrats block this bill and it leads to a shutdown.
I think we have to pull that lever. That's the lever we have at this moment in time. I mean, are we okay that an authoritarian administration is taking over American cities? Are we okay that our First Amendment, our Second Amendment, and our Fourth Amendment rights under the Constitution are being violated? Hell no, we're not okay. But if we don't take a stand now, at this moment in America, look at what is happening. This is coming to a city if we don't take a stand now. So I am absolutely committed to holding the line, and I encourage my Senate colleagues to stand the line, hold it, and force Republicans to do what they know is right. And out of control is attacking and terrorizing the people of Minnesota, and they're coming to you if we don't stop them here.
Congressman, how far should Democrats take this?
That's just plain facts. That's just plain facts.
Do you push to abolish ICE?
Well, look, we're always going to need border enforcement at the southern border, but we absolutely have to dismantle Trump and Kristi Noem's version of ICE. And by the way, they're not actually doing immigration enforcement here. That's not what this is about. Donald Trump said they were coming after the worst of the worst. And instead, what are they doing? They're murdering a Minnesotan, Renee Good. They're murdering another Minnesotan yesterday. Anyone with eyes can see what happened in this video. The first hands-on anyone came from an ICE agent to a woman. Alex Preddy stepped up to help a fellow Minnesotan. We are seeing this all over Minnesota. And let me tell you, as a mother of a 28-year-old young man here in Minnesota who has a permit to carry, my first reaction yesterday, because he and his friends have been out standing with their neighbors, was to call and find him, because my wife and I were not certain that this wasn't our own son yesterday. Folks, if you think this can't happen to you, this young man, under his constitutional rights, was videoing. We have asked people to video, to document the abuses of ICE. My heart goes out, and we've been asked by the family.
Oh, she's right. She's right. Walz told people to do this. Walz said record ICE. Walz told this guy to go out there, and he did exactly what he was told. And he was murdered. What is he doing?
Of Alex Preddy, to lift him up. He was an ICU nurse who worked on saving the lives of our nation's veterans. And what he did, as far as I'm concerned, was try to help his fellow Minnesotan yesterday. And it got him absolutely murdered by these.
And Congressman, you're referring to this as a murder. I was talking to a Minneapolis City Councilwoman this morning who referred to these ICE agents as domestic terrorists. Would you go that far in labeling them as such?
2 weeks ago,
they're attacking civilians to affect a political outcome. Sounds like terrorists to me.
Good was murdered. I said that this was an out of control, untrained agency. I'm changing my words here today because I think these ICE agents are doing exactly what they've been trained and enabled to do by Donald Trump and this administration. And make no mistake about it, this is not going to help Donald. This is not going to help Republicans. I've had colleagues, Republicans from my congressional district in the state house call me in the last 48 hours and say, my God, we're trying to tell our leadership that this is going to absolutely kill us in the next, metaphorically, of course, in the next election. This is something that Minnesotans are absolutely disgusted by. And I'm not just talking about Democrats. We've got so many libertarians in Minnesota. A third of my district, congressional district, is independent voters. And what they are seeing, the abuses by ICE, the overreach by ICE in our communities is not good for the Republican Party, and it's certainly not good for America.
The libertarians will save us. The Democrats really are the most pathetic fucking losers, aren't they? I'm confused. Why doesn't she just tell us she reacted to this story with terror, that this victim was her kid? She personally terrorized. Why would she call them terrorists? Because the word terrorist is to designate a human being that has no rights, so they could be killed summarily and extrajudicially. When you call someone a terrorist, what you're saying is they don't get to have a time in court. They don't get prosecuted. They don't get arrested. They don't get a lawyer. When you call someone a terrorist, you're calling for their mass death. That's why she didn't do it. But it is why she's very comfortable calling Palestinians terrorists. I really, not very complicated what we need to do, chat. In the wake of another fatal shooting by federal immigration officers in Minneapolis, many people are wondering what could be done. The answer has been right in front of us all along. Despite the incredulity with which some legal observers meet the idea, state and local prosecutors can prosecute federal officials for violating state criminal laws. Prosecutors should be gathering and securing evidence and seriously considering filing charges sooner rather than later. Not every prosecution will succeed and will all face obstacles that are built into our legal system, but critically, bringing these state and local prosecutions could produce deterrent effects that are so desperately needed now. U.S. law, at least theoretically, provides a range of options for holding government officers accountable. The problem is that many of those options are unavailable in practice where federal officers are concerned. Consider, for instance, federal criminal prosecution, which should be an option for federal officers who commit murder. As recently as 2019, the first Trump administration told the Supreme Court that federal criminal prosecution would be an appropriate remedy in cases in which an officer used lethal force without justification. But the current administration didn't investigate the January 7th killing of Renee Good, and it has already stated that the Department of Homeland Security, which has no experience investigating law enforcement shootings, will run the investigation into the killing of Alex Jeffrey Peretti. A future president could potentially pursue charges for an offense like the recent shootings of Miss Good and Mr. Peretti that has no statute of limitations, but that assumes President Trump wouldn't first pardon the responsible officers. What's more, a series of decisions by the Supreme Court has made it all but impossible to hold federal officers liable for damages in federal lawsuits for violating our constitutional rights, such as in February 2020 decision involving a border agent who shot and killed an unarmed teenager without provocation. Instead, the historical backstop for a lack of federal accountability going all the way back to the founding has been state law. States prosecuting federal officers for crimes committed in the course of their federal duties would certainly face complications, but those hurdles would not be insurmountable. One such complication, the federal officer charged by state prosecutors for a crime committed while on duty, could move any such case to federal court. But that would simply change the courthouse and the judge and jury pool. State prosecutors would still be seeking to enforce state law, which, among other things, means that any conviction would not be subject to the president's pardon power. A second potential hurdle to clear, a federal officer defendant could argue that he's entitled to what's known as supremacy clause immunity. J.D. Vance, Kristi Noem, and Stephen Miller have all claimed that this immunity is absolute, but they're all wrong. As highly regarded a conservative former judge, Michael McConnell, wrote on behalf of Denver-based federal appeals court in 2006, a federal officer is not entitled to supremacy clause immunity unless, in the course of performing an act which he is authorized to do under federal law, the agent had an objectively reasonable and well-founded basis to believe that his actions were necessary to fulfill his duties. In other words, the ability to prosecute federal law enforcement officers who commit state crimes in the course of their duties would turn on whether a reasonable officer in their position would have believed their actions were necessary to fulfill their duties. That standard may be appropriately strict to maintain federal authority when needed, but at least based on the videos so many of us have seen, it should not be impossible. Nor should state and local prosecutors think this power to bring charges under state law exists or should exist only when the offense results in death. Every day, Americans are seeing an unending stream of videos showing federal officers destroying property, pepper spraying individuals on a whim, and using what at least appear to be excessive degrees of force. Many, if not most of these acts are potential violations of criminal law. If those crimes are not reasonable and well-founded in light of federal duties, the officers can be convicted and penalized and even jailed. What prosecutors should be doing now is what Minnesota prosecutors did after the murder of Renee Good, establishing online portals to which individuals could upload their videos and other evidence. Will there be a flood of evidence? Yes. Will it all justify prosecution? No. Will some offenders be charged? We can't say for sure, but it looks like the answer ought to be yes. And that's true even if the final result is not a conviction. If federal officers understand they could and might well be held liable for outrageous conduct, they might think twice before engaging in it. The ultimate goal is bringing to justice those who've engaged in blatantly unlawful and unconstitutional conduct, but what is needed immediately and urgently is deterring such conduct from happening going forward. The problem is the Democrats are weak, and Donald fucking Trump knows it, and they know it. And until somebody grabs an ICE agent and arrests his ass, they're gonna keep doing it. All right, chat. I'm gonna call it there, man. I'm gonna call it there before I fucking explode. Here's all my links. Thank you so much for all the support. I'm sending you all over to Vio. Vio is back. I think Vio is going to be talking a little bit about Tectone losing at court. If you want to see the coverage of that. And fuck ICE. Fuck Israel. Fuck Trump. Thank you so much for all your support. Thank you for all the awesome community that we're building. I'll be back here tomorrow. We're going to stay up to date on all the emerging stories. Solidarity forever, my friends. Socialism will win. Have a good one.